East Hampton Town Board, we are live.
Thank you, LTV. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the East Hampton Town Board work session of December 10th, 2024, here at the Montauk Library. Carol, if you could please read the roll call.
Councilmember Flight.
Present.
Councilmember Lease.
Present.
Councilmember Rogers.
Present.
Councilmember Calder-Piedmont.
Present.
Supervisor Burke Gonzalez.
Present. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So this morning, we're going to open up with public portion, and then once everyone's had an opportunity to speak, we'll move on. We have 5 topics today. The first is our senior purchasing agent, Jeannie Carrozza, will be introducing bids that we have coming up. Then Councilmember David Lee, Superintendent of Recreation, John Rooney, and Chief Lifeguard John Ryan Jr. will give us our 2024 beach season review. That'll be followed by Assistant Town Attorney Charlie Collins, reviewing proposed amendment to Chapter 91 Beaches and Parks. Charlie will also take us through an urban renewal modification at 41 Roosevelt Avenue, East Hampton. And then Deputy Supervisor Kate Rogers will lead a discussion of alternate ZBA and ARB board members. That'll be followed by liaison reports and then resolutions. So first, we'll start with those folks that have signed up to speak. And first up is Jeff Bragman, and we ask folks to try to keep their comments to the 3-minute time limit because we have an extensive agenda today. Welcome, Jeff.
Good morning, board members and supervisor. I want to talk about the senior center and money. The price of the senior center is likely to be north of $30 million, and I wanted to give an idea of the scale of the project by comparing it to the town's unrestricted surplus reserves, which are only $25 million. And those reserves are there for eventualities that we can't always predict. And in fact, the town recently used some of those reserved funds because it had spent more than it could raise without breaking through the tax limit that the state has set on raising our taxes. So they broke through that limit, and they also used unrestricted funds, took funds from elsewhere to lessen the hit that happened from that. The project really paid very little attention, no attention, the board, to the attendance in the current senior center, which is sparse. It's generally about 15 to 30 persons, nor did the size and scale of the building relate to the information you got from your online survey, in which 50% of the respondents to the survey indicated they had not used the senior center in 5 years, and the other 50% said we only use it 1 to 3 times per year. It's oversized for its site. It's oversized for the use. Also, public participation was deliberately and intentionally thwarted. In July and August of 2022, there were 4 meetings where people could discuss activities at the senior center, but no discussion of the site plan or the building, which wasn't selected until January of 2023. And at that point, the board waited for almost a year till December 7th, 2023, and then hustled through all the steps to start this project on the road to approval. And in the December 7th, on December 7th, you held the one and only public hearing on it. Shortly between Thanksgiving and Christmas, about 6 people attended. And at the hearing, the town denied that it would exempt itself from zoning. That was untrue. It denied that, and the supervisor specifically denied that it required variances. That was untrue. A work session was quickly scheduled in the following week in which they discussed Monroe, which is the case that allows the town to completely vacate any kind of zoning review. And at that work session, they discussed this Monroe case, but they denied that it related to the senior center. This was untrue. And then what they did is on January 4th, on 7 days' notice, very short, you scheduled your Monroe hearing. Oddly, it's taken you about a year after you close that hearing on Monroe to publish the results. It seems very strange and deliberate that it was only last night that you published the findings that were just released. And The point of Monroe is that it exempts the town from any kind of review, puts the town board solely in charge. The findings are illustrative because they admit the variances that the supervisor was unaware of, and they're enormous, the variances for this thing. The total lot coverage, the plan exceeds total lot coverage limitations by more than an acre. The building coverage exceeds building coverage limitations by nearly half an acre. The clearing limits that are 80,000 square feet. This project is going to take 300% more clearing. It's going to do 3 times the limit of clearing to a total of 240,000 square feet. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife recently advised the board that it's habitat for an endangered bat. I know nobody wants to hear about it, but they're pollinators and they're on the verge of extinction. The population is very important. And they warned the town board to go and get a permit for incidental taking of the bats. They didn't follow that advice. And there are many other variances, at least 6 other variances. The findings are worth the public's attention. It finds that zoning and planning processes would foil the fulfillment of a public purpose, and it says that existing land use regulations would have a prohibitive effect on the project. It also claims they make no recognition of the concerns that are, afoot in the town today about right-sizing development on lots, the concerns expressed by residents about rapacious developers who come in and clear-cut sites before they build, exactly what the town board proposes to do with this project. And I say to the town board that they were not elected, you were not elected to be the largest developers in the town of East Hampton. In the alternative section, there's no mention of the adjacent disturbed lot, the same size as this lot, where they're going to have to tear down a house. But instead, this plan calls for building a flagpole access at a cost of $1 million just for the access to get to the rear lot and decimate the habitat on the lot. No mention of a smaller compact design, no mention of clear-cutting the lot. And last and most insulting in the findings, which were just released last night, 1 year later from the date that you conducted the hearing, I've never heard of the town board hiding the result of a public hearing. You had 12 months in which you could have publicized this and let the public know about it, but you hid it in your back pocket. The most insulting and arrogant part of the findings are that they denigrate community objections. And they say, oh, they were just generalized opposition. And it says the town board finds that public concerns do not rise to the level of local interests of substance and significance. They didn't provide enough technical analysis or documentation of substantial concerns. This is a project of reckless spending. It is dismissive of community concerns. It sets a hypocritical example for others in the town who are forced to go through a rigorous and required planning review process that's good enough for citizens, but it's not good enough for the town board. The design and size are jarringly incongruous. It looks like an airport terminal. It does not speak to rural character. It does not reflect our visual history of construction with natural materials. And it reflects a fear and an arrogance with respect to public comment. This is the town treating its funds like monopoly money while it gives itself a get-out-of-jail-free card. This project should not move forward.
That's everyone that signed up. Is there anyone else here that would like to address the board? Mr. Peters.
Alexander Peters, President, Amagansett Springs Aquifer Protection. Our town comprehensive plan mandates the town board to take forceful measures to protect and reduce human impacts to high-quality grounded drinking water resources, which exist beneath the land east of Accabonac Road, south of Red Dirt Road, north of the railroad tracks, which includes this parcel, north of the railroad tracks and inland from Gardner's Bay. It recommends our town comprehensive plan. Perhaps the town board members should read it. The highest level of protection, acquisition, is recommended for all parcels within this area. And now, to top it all off, the town board is violating all of our town's environmental protections, ramming ahead with a close to $30 million project that virtually nobody wants. Building a new senior center. We already have a senior center right next to Windmill Village, which is an absolutely appropriate place for a senior center. Why not either rebuild or adapt the senior center we already have? Even spend $5 million doing that. But no, Kathy Burke-Gonzalez wants to blow $30 million of our tax dollars. Your tax bill is about to go way up for a building virtually nobody wants. I canvassed 40 of my over 65-year-old local friends, and only one was in favor of a brand new senior center. One. 39 were completely against it. Nobody uses it, nobody wants the tax bill, and nobody wants to raise 7 acres of land that are vital aquifer protection and the home of an endangered species that is almost extinct everywhere else in the world, but thrives in this little piece of woodland. Nobody wants this building. Nobody uses the present senior center, and nobody wants the tax burden of a new $30 million building. At a recent ACAC meeting, which you should know all about, 14 folks who were over 65 were asked about the building, and everybody was against it. Didn't want the tax burden and were horrified by the environmental costs. In this day of global climate crisis, we need the 7 acres of trees this town board wants to demolish to absorb carbon. This beautiful forest is also home to an endangered bat that is almost extinct everywhere else, but thrives in these woods next to the railroad track off of Abraham's Path. The town board is violating every environmental law applicable to this piece of land. How? The town is not following its own zoning or planning laws to force this project down our throats. No developer could ever get away with this. But this town board doesn't care. Just after the town board decided that no houses above 10,000 square feet will be allowed, the town wants to ram a 22,000 square foot building, demolishing most of a 7-acre unique forest down our throats and increase our taxes to pay for it. So let's check on what the town comprehensive plan had to say about this. It recommended the land between Abraham's Path, the railroad tracks, and Windmill Lane be upzoned from A2 to A3 because, quote, this land occupied by Artist Woods, a riding academy, and a cemetery is within the New York State Special Groundwater Protection Area and the 5-foot groundwater contour boundary, both criteria identified as critical for protecting East Hampton's ground and drinking water resources. So the town board is usurping and making a laughing stock of its own environmental laws by using the Monroe Doctrine to allow itself to raise a beautiful forest. The town board is further polluting the Stony Hill aquifer by violating its own laws. It's time for a lawsuit and a recall. We need a town board that follows its own environmental laws and listens to its citizens. We don't want or need this building. We, the people of the town of East Hampton, want a town board, and we elected you to protect our water and protect endangered species that exist almost nowhere else. Judy Hope Tony Bullock, Kathy Lester, and all past Democrats would be horrified by this terrible destruction. And I just want to ask two questions. You're a family man. You have beautiful children and a lovely wife. How would you like it if one day you went off to work and came back to find your entire neighborhood razed, leveled? Okay? That's what you're doing to this endangered species. And you are a thoroughly good man. I know it. I feel it. I talk to you. I know you care. How can you allow this to happen? This is our vital aquifer, responsible for all the water, for firefighting and drinking water, for Amagansett, Springs, Montauk, Napeague, and all the public water going to Montauk.
Sass, we need
Please.
to wrap it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to address the board? Yes.
Good morning. My name is Orly Friedman. I'm a resident of Springs. I've been living here for 40 years. I'd like to echo some of the sentiments that have been presented by Mr. Peters.
Just hold. Mr. Peters, please, it's a small room and it's hard to hear.
So I'd like to echo the sentiments that were presented by Mr. Peters about the tax burden, the clear cutting of land, the violations of zoning and planning laws, the endangered bat species, which I think are vital with the loss of bees and other pollinators, now the lantern flies. I mean, these are critters that are important to our ecosystem out here. But in addition to just the overall construction of this massive center, I would like to know if anybody has done any kind of study that says this is how much it's going to cost taxpayers to operate a 20,000 plus facility. Also, the fact that it's so far out of proximity to where a lot of the seniors live in Windmill Villages 1 and 2. There's going to be additional costs to transport people. There's going to be additional labor needed to transport people. There's going to be certainly more of possibilities of accidents. We're going to need more vehicles. We're supposed to be taking care of our environment. We're just adding for costs and transportation and labor, and people can't even afford to live here. We can't, as a business owner, I can't find help. Where are we going to get these people? Are we going to hire seniors to drive each other around? The beauty of where the senior center is for the people that use it is their proximity to it. And so I don't understand the need to rush this through. I understand it's been in the planning stages for many, many years, but I think we need to come together more often, give people more of an opportunity to present their side and whether or not they use it. I mean, recently, the Gaming Commission just came down on bingo at the senior center. 2 nights a week, they spent $1.25 a card. That's now been banned. So what are we using this center for? And why do we need such a large center? How many people are we actually serving? I would like to know if somebody has done like a square footage to say, these are this many centers these are this many senior citizens that use this center. What are they getting, 200 square feet per person or per use? I don't know. I don't understand the level of service that this new center is supposed to provide. Is it going to be a rehab facility? What is it? I don't understand. So I would like to have a little bit more clarification in not only the initial costs and the initial damage to the environment, but the long-term operating expenses. You know, I think back to the year where the Y was established and then it had to be turned over because the town couldn't afford to run it. So are we going to be stuck in that same position where suddenly we now have to bring in a private entity to take over? I just think there's too many unknown variables for me to be able to support this project on top of the known variables of the overclearing and the damage to the aquifer and the damage to the environment. So I would urge the board to really reconsider what its citizens and the people who we elected you really feel is the actual need for a senior center. Because I agree, we do need a center, and I think it's important to have something. But I think this is grossly being overdone for.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate you.
Is there anyone else here that would like to address the board? Jason, is there anyone on the line?
We currently have 3 callers on the line. I will unmute them.
Thank you.
Starting with the first, let's see. Hello, caller ending 5615. You're on the air. Hello.
Oh, hi, that's me. This is Terry Berger, and I'm a Montauk citizen and a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals. I'm calling about the memorandum that I'm reading in regard to the discussion for alternates, the architectural review.
Terry, please, are you speaking as a private citizen or a member of the ZBA?
Can I speak as both? I'm speaking as a private citizen.
If you were speaking in regards to the ZBA, you would have needed to had a vote on the ZBA to appoint you to speak on each member's behalf.
Okay, no,
So it would be, you can certainly, but please speak as a private citizen. That's totally appropriate.
Okay, I am. Well, I'm reading this memorandum, and as a private citizen, I do think that I'm going to address the last paragraph first, which actually made me call in, whether an applicant should have the right or ability to request a certain member, either regular or alternate, deliberate on its application where both have been present for and participated. I think that is, I don't know, I don't recall seeing this in the documentation prior to this, and I think that's really kind of crazy. I do want to go to some of the things I might have some value in this. The first bullet item up above, should alternate members be required to attend all meetings, even when all regular members will be present? I do think that is a good idea. We don't always know when an alternate member may be needed for a meeting due to an absence, which could occur on short notice or no notice at all, and that would better prepare them for any instance such as that. I do think may an alternate member ask questions and submit input when not appointed to replace an absent member. I disagree with that. I do not think that they should be unless they are appointed because of to replace a member, and also that they only be permitted to vote when a regular member is absent or recused and they have followed through. When they fill in, I'll go to that bullet item. There are things in all of these that I think need some work, but when an alternate member fills in, I do think that if they filled in for a hearing, that they should follow that through all the way to the point of an ultimate decision. And so that's in a sub-bullet item there. Some municipalities on this notice say that they do have them follow through, and others do not. I do think that should be the case if and when they replace a member for a hearing, that they follow that right through to the decision. And I do think also that they don't have any authority to, unless they are covering for an actual member of the board, at whether it's a decision or a hearing. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Terry. Jason, if you could put the next caller through, please.
All right. Caller ending 6412. You're on the air.
Good morning, board. It's Rona Klopman, and I'm calling in reference to the Amagansett Citizens Advisory meeting that met last night, and we had 18 people present. The senior center was a great topic of discussion. Many of the people, if not all, felt it was an enormous project, and that $2 million for 30 years on a financial basis is extraordinary for this town. The town, if we have a tragic event like a hurricane, which can happen in the next 30 years, we are at risk for road repairs, building repairs, and the town will not have enough funds in its reserve to really function. So I think it would be totally inappropriate for the town to continue on the basis of what it has in the resolution that's before this board. I've read it through, and the Citizens Advisory Committee felt that one of the things which was read from the resolution, that the impact on local interests will be positive, is a ridiculous statement. Also, the statement that the generalized opposition to building a senior center cannot undermine the town board's Monroe analysis, and I'm reading from your resolution itself, that the town board finds that the articulated concerns by members of the public do not rise to the level of a countervailing local interest of substance and significance that is really anti-transparency for this town. You are not listening to the residents. I've listened to Seth Peters. I've listened to Jeff Bragman. They make really good points, and this town board doesn't seem to be listening, which is a failure on its part. And to me, you are not acknowledging the people who are in this town who have to pay the taxes. You are going to cause seniors to leave this town. You're not going to be able to have people coming to the senior center if you continue on this taxation on this senior center, which right now I see there are 15 seniors a day to about 35 if you have an event, and that certainly doesn't signify a need for a 22,000 square foot center, particularly when you have a zoning code committee that's been working for over a year to change the zoning in the town so that it's more applicable to the acreage, and now you have something that needs 13 variances that you alone are going to justify. So I think you really have to go back to the drawing board and see what you can do, as another resident has said this morning, about redoing the current building and remodeling it. And I think you have to really listen to the people of this town. Thank you.
Next caller.
Jason, if you could put the next caller through.
Yep. And hello, caller ending 4221.
Thank you. Good morning, Town Board. This is Jane Meering, and I'm speaking as a citizen. Well, I live in Amagansett, and I'm speaking as an individual citizen member of the public. I knew the issue of alternates was on the agenda for today, but I just this morning became aware of the December 10th memorandum from Town Attorney Rob Connolly to the Town Board regarding alternates for ARB and ZBA. I was a little surprised not to have seen it come up earlier. I think this board has a really strong record of getting their documentation up on a Friday before a Tuesday work session, so I just happened to stumble across it. As you know, this was an issue that was work sessioned in May, public hearings in June, and adopted by a vote of the board. And I was under the impression that the town was just simply waiting for the requisite approval from the state to make this effective. So I was a little surprised when I read the memo. It seems to be addressing some topics that are more substantial and material in ways beyond what was discussed during the robust work session and public hearing process. So I just want to touch on a few things in the application. So in the third paragraph, the town attorney writes, at the public hearing, 2 speakers spoke in support of the amendments. The one speaker, who is a zoning board member, requested that alternate members not be utilized in instances where a regular member is on vacation. I just want to address this in 2 ways. I spoke at that hearing as an individual member of the public, but here I am identified as a zoning board member, so it might confuse in what capacity I spoke. Also, my comments were not just about when a member is on vacation. I made the point that the board has a strong history if someone is taken sick at the last minute or has a family emergency last minute or, might be on vacation and they can't participate. Generally, the members are able to watch everything, they read everything, and they have a history of being able to then come back and make a decision. So I just wanted to address that. I'm not going to go into them. I actually heard Citizen Berger speaking, and the things that she was in favor of, I also would also say are good. But the 2 parts of the memo, may an alternate member ask questions and submit input when not appointed to replace? May an alternate member be permitted to vote only when a regular member is absent or recused? That is something that I look forward to your discussion today, but that I think takes an alternate's abilities. So, that would mean we could have 6 votes on something. And then the last paragraph, I must call out, I won't read it again, but the idea that an applicant would have a right to pick and choose which board members they want to deliberate on its application is something that sounds like it would be unprecedented, and I don't want to come down too hard on it, but this takes us into a very material new area. And all in, my question is, will this need another public hearing? Some of these things seem so material that maybe there's another public hearing that needs to be had. So I look forward to hearing your discussion later. Thank you so much, Board.
Thank you, Jane. Jason, is there anyone else on the line?
Yes, we have 2 more callers remaining so far. Caller ending 6554. You're on the air. And could we mute the TV in the background potentially? And I want to come back to them.
Yeah, they may just be listening in.
They very well could be. Hello, caller ending 2777. You're on the air.
Thank you. This is Michael Chinque. I can confirm with Rona that we were pretty unanimous at the meeting the other night about the space and the clearing, the size of the building, and the budget. Also, being a safety officer of the fire department, the topic came up about emergency shelters. I think we're going to have, we're due for another one real soon. There's really no place to run to. I think that'd be a great place. I was just talking to a mason friend of mine who said the basement is the cheapest part of a building. You're going down 3 or 4 feet for footings anyway. So why don't we just keep going a couple more feet? I don't really think if we build a more efficient building that was more rectangular or square, I think that would be easier to do and more cost effective. So I'm not against the senior center, but I think we need something more in our budget. Maybe go down for emergency shelter and storage, maybe go up on some part of it for offices, because I know there's offices. And I also just think we have to live with a budget we can all afford. So that would be my take. But I do thank you guys for making all these great considerations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, and that was our last caller.
So the folks that were listening in, did they hang up or are they still there?
They hung up.
Okay. All right, beautiful. Thank you. One last call here in the main meeting, the library. Does anyone else want to address the board?
They just called back. They just hopped back on the line.
All right.
Hello, caller ending 6554.
Hello?
Hello, you are on the air.
Oh, and everything is totally out of sync. This
Yes,
is Lauren
because
Bolger calling,
yes,
and I am
if you could mute your
calling up-
please stop. Mute your TV in the background first.
It's muted.
Oh, thank you very much. I heard it at the beginning. Thank you. Please begin.
Okay. Hi, this is Lauren Bolger calling, and I am calling about the Center for Modern Aging, which is also known as the Senior Center. I was at the Amagansett Citizens Advisory Committee meeting last night just to see what was going on, and I am in total favor of a new senior center. I think it's needed, and frankly, I think everybody or the seniors in this town support such a thing. But this building, as it is conceived, does not really fill the needs of the community. And I know that a lot of money has been spent to get this project going, but I think it's ill-advised not to go right back to the drawing board and look at the needs of the community and see what design would best fill those needs. And maybe this is not the proper place for it either. Also last night, the idea of an emergency shelter came up. I hadn't even thought of that before, but this is a great opportunity to provide this town with an emergency shelter that at one point, sooner or later, we are going to need. So my suggestion is, or my ask is, that this project continue to be looked at and maybe really even start again and see what people need and want and how that can be brought to the town in the most expeditious way. So thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
And that's it.
Okay. So I just wanted to make a comment because a couple of folks brought up in their public comment about town funds and fund balance and reserve. So I'm looking at page 4 of the 2025 adopted budget, and the town across its 5 funds has over $72 million in fund balance. Almost a little over 31 million in the general whole town, close to 20 million in the general part town. Highway has 9.7 million, sanitation refuse 4.3 million, and the airport has 6.7 million. And that's projected obviously for year-end 2024. We probably won't have those numbers till about end of first quarter of 2025. But I just wanted folks to know that obviously we have a Moody's AAA bond rating, and, we're financially secure. Okay, so now we've got.
Supervisor, can I make a comment?
Sure, absolutely.
In 1981, I moved on to Thomas Avenue. I learned how to ride my bike there. For many of the individuals in here, I'm one of the only people that grew up in the town of East Hampton. I was born in Southampton. I am still here today. There's only a couple of people in this room. I don't know if anyone that spoke today is someone that can either say that they're born here and lived their entire life in East Hampton. That's for one. For Thomas Avenue, it's a street that my dad cut. And it's directly across from the Artist Woods, which is directly across for where the entrance for the Center for Modern Aging will be. Learned to ride my bike. It was a banana bike on there. My parents grew up there, and I was fortunate for my dad, who came on a freighter from Indonesia here and immigrated here, and also my mother, who was a teacher for 29 years. They are now 80 and 87. They are seniors. They want to see this facility built. As you've heard from me about my children being my lens, these are my parents. They're also my lens then too. The senior center that we have is woefully inadequate to provide the services that we need for our aging population then too, and make it to a point where it's modern for individuals that want to stay here, live here, age in place here, to have facilities where they can cognitively, physically, emotionally, socially develop. As we have stated in Goal 10, the town of East Hampton, Goal 10 of the Comprehensive Plan says provide adequate facilities, land and programs for schools, town offices, and other functions, daycare, senior care, families, and other educational, cultural, and recreational and health care needs. Many of these can all be encompassed within the new Center for Modern Aging. We have looked at this location and the demands we needed over multiple years, nearly 7 of them on there then too. We have looked at this in a very methodical approach to get the information out to where the town board has been discussing, to what the feelings of community members, pro and con to the facility, and listening to get to a point where we as decision makers have to, and legislators have to make decisions for how and where we want to move forward. As many of the voices we heard today might not be in favor of it, we've heard same, if not many, many more that are extremely in favor of this facility. As far as protecting land, we have saved dozens of acreage in this aquifer of Stony Hill, including acreage of one of the individuals that even spoke today. So if you say that I don't care what my family wants, you're wrong. I care tremendously what my family wants. My lens is my children, my lens is my parents, 80 and 87. They're fortunate still to live here. They came here, they want to still be here, but they also need to have a place to do all those senses that I just expressed in a nice facility, because what we have currently right now is outdated and we need to move on and forward with it in a way that is appropriate. Also, as far as the size, we should design things that are needed for future use, 20, 30, 50 years. I heard the same discussion when we discussed the Southampton Emergency Center, which is a beautiful facility if anyone wants to go down there. We had individuals that wanted to make it smaller. They wanted to design emergency center from a board, not from what emergency centers or individuals that build hospitals should do. Now, the overall result looks spectacular. And some of the similarities there are the same. It backs up on, again, it's a public utility. It backs up on other property that the town owns. It backs up on some woodlands, and it backs up on other large tracts of land then too. There's a lot of similarities there. And unfortunately, the voices that we heard then are the same we're hearing now. What we need to do is make sure this town is prepared for the next 20, 30 to 50 years to make sure East Hampton, as I first came here, was born in 1976, is as good as hopefully I can be as my dad is, and when I'm 87. Those are my comments.
Thank you, David. Okay, so let's move on. Jeannie, if you'd like to start us off with bids. Welcome, Jeannie.
Hello, thank you. I have a couple of bids to accept today. The first is for the Star Island dredging. The apparent low bidder is Keith Grimes, and the amount is $11,280. And next is the tree clearing for 403 Abraham's Path. The apparent low bidder for that is Green Velvet Landscaping, in the amount of $215,000.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for Jeannie?
Nope. No.
No questions.
Tina, I know that you had wanted to address the board.
Hello, town board members. Tina Lagaren, acting planning director. I did want to take a few minutes to assure the board that the environmental review conducted for the proposed senior center was both extensive and thorough and complied with state environmental quality review law. Specifically, an overview of the environmental review includes the following highlights. We prepared a full EAF Part 1. We used the long form. It's the form that's reserved for the larger actions. An expanded environmental assessment accompanied the Part 1, and it was sent to interested and involved agencies for comment. All required impact categories in the full EAF Part 2 were thoroughly evaluated and reviewed with the board in detail at 2 separate sessions. Detailed technical studies and designs were also prepared by qualified experts in their respective fields for stormwater and wastewater management, which provides for groundwater protection, traffic, noise, archaeology, and also for the study of potential impacts to endangered species, namely the northern long-eared bat, or NLEB. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. A lot of prior public comment focused on the NLEB, so I do want to make sure the record is clear on that. Regarding NLEB, we coordinated with both DEC and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service several times during both 2023 and 2024 as the environmental review progressed. And in the final months of 2024, the process was completed. Our first element of the 2024 coordination was with DEC. They're typically the only agency we would coordinate with for something like this. They've got jurisdiction of matters with no federal permits. They issued a letter in June 2024, clearly indicating that no permit was necessary and no incidental take permit was required, with adherence to the clearing window that the town board offered to commit to, which is clearing is only allowed in the winter months. We then took more steps, recognizing that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had upgraded the species from threatened to endangered in April 2024. In an abundance of caution, we coordinated with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Long Island office as well. In August 2024, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service issued a comment letter, which recommended that the town conduct an internal review because there was a confirmed detection of NLEB within a mile of the project site and due to concerns about habitat fragmentation. Their letter did not indicate any confirmed NLEB activity directly on the site. Their letter further noted that after the internal review, there was a voluntary incidental take permit process available should the town choose to pursue it. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service did not give us criteria for what type of internal review we should undertake. But nevertheless, again, showing the utmost of caution regarding this issue, we pursued a scientific approach and sought the services of individuals qualified to prepare biological assessments. So I'm going to note here that there are federal criteria that professionals must meet in order to be able to prepare credible scientific reports of this nature. We hired professionals, Nelson Pope and Voorhees, and they are U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service approved non-federal preparers with qualifications to prepare biological assessments for the review of federal and state agencies. So it's not the town who determined that they're qualified. They meet the federal criteria for being qualified for this type of work. The qualified biologists at Nelson, Pope, and Voorhees conducted the biological assessment study and concluded that there was no significant adverse impacts anticipated, and that was in September. Specifically, based on their findings, no incidental take was anticipated, and this is consistent with DEC's findings in September. And therefore, they did not recommend the pursuit of the voluntary incidental take permit, basically the conclusion you don't need a permit if you're not proposing to do the regulated activity. Then in October, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service issued updated guidance for northern long-eared bat assessments. We again stopped and paused, and then conducted a thorough analysis of what the new guidance meant for the previous conclusions that the qualified biologist had found that the incidental take was not anticipated. After review of that October guidance, our qualified biologists concluded that the protections we proposed, adherence to the winter clearing window, when the bats are not expected to be in the vicinity of the project site, are more protective, and I'm going to say that one more time, more protective than what would be required by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service guidance. And all of this is supported by detailed technical reports and analysis available in the Planning Department files. So then for context, I want to remind everyone that the entire town is shown on the mappers of DEC as potential northern long-eared bat habitat. For discretionary actions that we review, including clearing of wetlands, private developers are referred to DEC to confer about the impacts, as DEC is the appropriate agency for New York State to review these matters. This is no different than where we started our NLEB analysis. We just went a step further, seeking federal guidance too, recognizing the change in regulatory status. We wanted to be very cautious, and we were. So to conclude, the environmental review we conducted absolutely meets the requirements of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, aka SECRA. It was extensive, prepared by the Planning Department's professional planners and other qualified experts in many fields, including stormwater and sanitary management, which provides for groundwater protection, traffic, noise, archaeology, biology, and it was informed by a team of engineers and architects. The conclusions of the review that I'm talking about here today are supported by detailed technical studies and have been thoroughly vetted by myself and all of you. And they concluded that there are no significant adverse environmental impacts from the project, including none to the NLEB anticipated. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Does anyone have questions for Tina?
No, I have no questions.
Thank you.
Just also, Tina, thank you for that presentation and thank you for the timeliness of it because unfortunately I'm hearing so much misinformation. I think it's important to get the information out to folks. So I thank you for coming here today and speaking to that.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Tina. Okay, so next up, we have the 2024 beach season review, and that's with my colleague David Lease, Superintendent of Recreation John Rooney, and Chief Lifeguard John Ryan Jr. Welcome, folks.
I want to thank the supervisor and the members of the board for allowing me to present today an overall recap of the town's beach, parks, and recreational activities for the summer season, particularly our beaches. I want to thank John Ryan Jr., Chief of East Hampton Town Lifeguards, specifically him and his staff immediately for a wonderful season that you had. John Rudy for putting together your staff also. If I want to move forward on this, again, this advisory group was actually formed during COVID in response to COVID-19 to try to be able to make sure we open our beaches within the executive orders of the governor at the time then too. The town board continued to move this group forward so we can actually make sure we have a good collaborative working relationship with all our town entities to make sure that everyone has a very safe and enjoyable summer season then too. Members of this advisory group is myself as council member, Chief Michael Sarlo, John Rooney, who's a recreation department head, buildings and ground department head, Steve O'Brien, Town Marine Patrol, Tim Treadwell, Chief Lifeguard John Ryan Jr., Town Trustees Francis Bach, and also in the advisory capacity, Ed Michaels, Jeff Thompson, Haley Ryan, John Ryan Sr., Barnaby Friedman, and James Pincott. But also underneath of every single individual, there are dozens of other individuals to make the summer very, very safe. Next, if you don't mind. As we have done in the past, this report will include a summary of the pre-season hiring and certification activity, summary of our beach operations, seasonal protected and unprotected beach responses, our town police department recap, the small one, Marine Patrol, buildings and grounds recap, recreational recap, and recommendations for the 2025 season. Again, we have this up on the website, and we also have our end season beach report too. With that, I will bring John Ryan Jr., the Chief of the East Hampton Town Lifeguards, forward to present the next couple of slides.
Thank you for letting me come and present. Yes, thank you. It was a great summer, great preseason, postseason, I gotta say. Just to give a summary of our hiring and certification, we start our year off certifying Stillwater lifeguards and ocean lifeguards, and we conducted this in the early spring and the summer and qualified 39 Stillwater lifeguards and 47 ocean lifeguards. An additional 3 lifeguards recertified their Stillwater certification and 49 recertified their ocean certification. Our overall enrollment for the junior and NIPA program was pretty much the same as 2023. With the exception of our cadet program, which doubled since last summer. John Rooney, my boss, will speak about those enrollments of the different programs. The town of East Hampton employed 146 lifeguards this summer, 115 lifeguards, and 31 officers. This may seem like a lot, but it's really not, because some of them, lifeguard these day and ages, with the programs that we are engaged in helping to waterproof the community, a lot of those individuals are 2-day weekers and for 2 hours a day working with the young kids in the junior program and the NIPA program. But back on the beaches, we have to make sure our beaches are safe. So. And then you get those guards that go back off to college, and when they leave, come August, when we have these individuals recertifying, we're looking to pull in some of those to help finish the season off, so we're not closing beaches and keeping people safe. So the recruitment, I will say this was very noticeable improvement this year since 2023, where we really struggling. And that was due to, thank you to the board for allowing us to increase the ranking, our ranks in efforts to hire back a lot of the lifeguards or hire lifeguards that maybe would have taken a job somewhere else. One other way in which we helped the public was to put QR stickers, signage at all the beach access points. This QR code helped direct lifeguards, patrons, to access to our site, which we populate every day with the ocean conditions, whether it be temperature, wind, the weather, the surf conditions, all right? And we also actually post warnings on that page as well, which might tell somebody that's going to maybe an unprotected beach that there's a lot of rip currents out there. Maybe they shouldn't be going to an unprotected beach. They should be going to a protected beach. And we always suggest swim near a lifeguard. Beaches were manned by lifeguards from May 25th through September 15th for 91 operational days. This included 2 postseason weekends following Labor Day. In 2024 was a moderate surf condition. We had moderate surf conditions with 62 green flag days, 19 yellow flag days, 11 red flag days, and we had no flag days, which we would have if we had, say, a hurricane that came in and we didn't want anybody on the beach. So East Hampton Town Beaches hosted approximately 138,628 beach patrons this season. This number was up approximately 22,000 bathers from last year. And then just so you know, that's you may not think that's a lot, but that's in the protected areas. That's protected bathing beaches. That's not all of the beaches. That's protected areas. As the day proceeds, the guards try to have to, at the end of the day, get an estimate as to how many patrons are at the beach on that given day, and they enter that on a daily basis, and those numbers get populated on an ongoing basis. With beach operations suspended as of now, we have our crew out there presently inventorying supplies and equipment in preparation for the 2025 season. Lifeguard units recorded 24 aided injury responses thus far in 2024. Of these, 11 required EMS and 7 resulted in hospitalization. No fatalities. No fatalities on East Hampton Town beaches during these operational hours. Mobile units logged 25 emergency responses across both districts, Montauk and Amagansett, including 5 jet ski responses, 3 ATV responses, 17 truck responses. This season, we were able to purchase 3 AEDs due to a donation by a gentleman that we saved years ago, Dave Plotkin. And those were put in the trucks, 3 of the trucks that didn't have AEDs, so that we may have access to cardiac response capabilities. Narcan kits were also placed in all beaches and vehicle AED kits. Our lifeguards this summer performed 202 rescues this year at protected beaches, and additional 24 were made on unprotected beaches. Both metrics have doubled from last year, and together represent the most recorded in a single season. This highlights the importance of bathers to swim in protected areas and the need for lifeguards patrolling presence in the stretches of unprotected beaches. On yellow flag days or green to yellow or red flag days, we make it a point to get down to those areas where there are no lifeguards and make sure that people know that the beaches are unsafe, the conditions are dangerous, and to swim in the protected areas. Lastly, I do want to say thank you to the town board and John Rooney for allowing us to produce programs that waterproof this community. I can't say enough as how important it is to our young groups of children growing up. I just showed John that I put this blindfold here with me, and in here was my transcript from 1994 with and as well as my thesis, my project seminar paper I wrote. And the paper I wrote in 1994 was making water safety a part of your community, which I did quite well with. I got an A+ in that classroom. The follow-up from that time really kind of helped in developing all these programs, and I couldn't do it without the support of the town board. I gotta make sure I also say thank you to the East Hampton Town PD and East Hampton Town Marine Patrol and the fire districts that provide the ambulance services for these individuals. That there is nothing more pleasing to a lifeguard when they're dealing with an emergency on the beach to hear those sirens coming and getting closer and closer, to be able to hand them off to, again, professionals that can take them to an ambulance, with an ambulance to the hospital where they need that care. Thank you.
Johnny, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do you have any hypotheses as to why rescues, almost doubled?
It's some seasons we don't have a lot of rescues. A lot of times it really comes down to the number of rip currents you have. 99% of all rescues are rip current related. So it depends on how the beach is set up. If you have a sandbar, which our beaches did, the sandbars were built up, and you're going to get rips. You're going to get cuts in those sandbars, and that water just floods right out through those rips. And then they fill in from day to day, and some are there for most of the set up the stands, and all of a sudden at Atlantic Avenue there's a giant rip right smack in front of the stand. Just showed up, and it was there most of the season. Mm-hmm. And there were days where they were making 10 rescues a day. Trying to keep people out of it, yeah, they do, but unfortunately people go in and they get swept down the beach. They get pulled in by that inside eddy current that just brings them right into it, or they step off the bar and into rip. So we just had a fortunate year where there were, and I say fortunate because the hardest job of a lifeguard is dealing with dull days, things not happening. The most exciting part of a lifeguard is making rescues. So.
Well, thank you very much, John. As your electron is going off, I know you're also a volunteer fireman for how many years?
22.
It just shows your service to this community as another lifelong resident then too, but also shows the respect that you have between your lifeguarding corps right now to educate all these individuals that have come through your ranks through multiple different ways to protect our waterfronts of our 71 miles of beach. Myself, I love going to the beach. I don't want to really see anyone at the beach, so I have my own little sliver of life. And if you're from Town Line Road to Ditch Plain to Albert's Landing on there, then too, it's one of the things that many of us all value here is being able to learn how to swim in the ocean, swim in the bay, swim in general, but also the same thing to know that we always have our back, the lifeguarding corps. So thank you very much. I'm going to move forward on to the next portion, which is about the East Hampton Town Police Department, and conferring with Chief Michael Sarlo. He wants to make sure that everyone knows the continued spirit of cooperation between all the departments led to a successful and safe season on the beaches. Prototypically, it's the Marine Patrol that will guard the beaches for the police department, but this group that we have right now allows face-to-face interaction, all the department heads and all the staff to be able to make an easy phone call for assistance need or such, not the next day or the next week, but in real time. He also wants to let us know that the use of the license plate readers in Montauk specifically this season was a great improvement in the traffic improvement for the traffic control officers. A part of the modernization of town enforcement agencies, we've added license plate readers to our cars for daily parking, permit parking, and also paid parking, and that proved to be of great success. It didn't happen fully until about midway through the season because of trying to integrate everything and then also get all of the TCOs used to the equipment, and also we added an extra set of cameras to cars. But the the improvement in what they were able to do was markedly noticed. Lastly, Chief of Police wants to make sure that the town board continues to move towards a unified command headquarters for the Montauk Hamlet. I know that's been discussion for multiple years. This would be a location for code enforcement, for lifeguards, for PD, Marine Patrol in Montauk. That's a facility that we currently have right now is been outgrown, so we continue to move that forward. Marine Patrol. Senior Harbor Master Treadmill is not here today, but also Jay Sharon, who was going to, he is actually cross-training today with the United States Coast Guard. So that happens a lot, and these are things that you might not get mentioned in a report like this, but there's cross-training between ocean rescue, lifeguards, state parks, village lifeguards, Coast Guard, and others. And two, when you have so many different municipalities in one township, what these individuals do as far as the head of these departments, they want to make sure we cross-train a lot. So that's great to always see. So I hope they're having a nice day out there. It's a little warmer today. Anyway, so the East Hampton Marine Patrol provided law enforcement to our beaches with a focus on public safety, education, and protection of our valuable natural resources, with seasonal patrols 7 days a week from 2 to 4 a.m. That was only provided because the current budgets and the budgets going forward have added other Marine Patrol positions in the last couple of years, and we will continue to look to do that. The Marine Patrol responded to over 500 calls for service on our beaches alone this year, Marine Patrol worked closely with town lifeguards, East Hampton Volunteer Ocean Rescue, Parks and Rec, code enforcement, provide safety and share information. The Marine Patrol issued over 600 citations for violations of the town code pertaining to beaches. Approximately 46% of these pertain to beach driving violations, 24% to non-compliant beach fires, 8% the dogs on the beach, 6% the camping, and other violations including littering, peddling, fireworks, and the lack of proper gathering permits. One thing that's not in here is that we, East Hampton Marine Patrol this year, just prior to the season, we brought into our equipment rank the new Marine Patrol 1 vessel. I know we had Tim Treble speak on it before, but it aided tremendously in the search and rescues, the SAR cases that we had this season. So again, it's the town board effectively spending tax dollars to make sure that we have not just the facilities, but also the equipment to provide enforcement and also safety on our waterways then too. John Rooney, if you want to come and get the next slides.
Morning.
Morning, John.
I'm just going to go through, even though Buildings and Grounds is not my department, I'm going to go through their stats as well for this summer. I'm glad I brought my copy because it's tough to read. The Parks Department had swept, and they keep up the beaches all throughout the season, keeping them clean. They do it by hand and by tractor. Sometimes some locations, depending on beach conditions, for example, the way Ditch Plains was this summer, sometimes they got to go in by hand and clean them up, and then when they can, they bring in a tractor. And they, in total, they moved about 121,000 pounds of litter throughout the summer, which is a tremendous amount. And they're very busy. My office is right there, so see it on a daily basis. There's a lot going on in the summertime behind the scenes. With the help of the Army Corps and the town lifeguards and Buildings and Grounds, they installed and maintained the new ADA-approved beach mats here in Montauk, 6 locations, and making beach access easier and safer. And they have to be constantly maintained because wind and folks walking on them and everything, they just need constant upkeep. So they do a great job keeping them up daily. With the help of others, the Parks Department rebuilt and maintained several beach heads as well and increased security fencing along the dunes to protect the ecosystem and protecting our town. Sometimes examples of like Big Albert's, the water washes down through the parking lot. It could take out the footpaths going down to the beach. It can also take out the drive-on areas, and that has to be replenished and redone. And sometimes you do it, and then another storm comes in, you got to do it again. So there's a lot to do with that, keep that upkeep. And Buildings and Grounds Department repaired and maintained 11 comfort stations around the town for bathers, providing amenities such as showers, bathrooms, water fountains throughout the season. And that's a constant too. That never goes away. So that's just a little bit of what they do. And then in terms for recreation for programming,
So we run lifeguard programs for juniors, really young kids, swim programs, all kinds of things throughout the summer. And these are just some of the stats of what we have going on. So in the summertime, through Johnny Ryan, also Johnny Ryan Sr., and then Haley Sinkyu running those programs, we have a cadet program that basically more than doubled over last year, which is great. That's 15-year-olds that come and do the program for the summertime, learning how to be a lifeguard. And then hopefully then they come on staff, starting the following year, and help to build into our lifeguarding system going forward. And then we also train up juniors who are basically ages 9 to 14. And during the summertime, we had 295 kids in that program, and that divides out between East Hampton and Montauk. We have 256 of that number are in Atlantic Avenue in the summer, and at Kirk we have about 39 kids in that program. And then we have Nippers, which goes down a little bit younger, which goes from age 8 to age 6, and we had about 133 of those kids, and that program divides between East Hampton and also Montauk as well. The Nippers, we had 109 kids ages 6 to 8 at Big Alberts, and then at East Lake at Gin Beach we had 24 kids in the Nipper program out here in Montauk. So both parts of the town. We also run free swimming lessons. We've been doing this for many decades, and this program runs for 2-week increments, and we do it at 4 different locations through the course of the summer. And this is for ages 4 and up, so we cover 4 all the way up to into adulthood with different programs. And we run it at Havens Beach at the beginning of the summer. We had 19 kids during the first 2 weeks. The second 2 weeks was at East Lake out in Gin. We had 34 kids. Then we had 40 at Maidstone after that for 2 more weeks. And then we did 2 weeks at Big Alberts. We had 37 kids, and a total of 130 of that really young group. And then Timmy Treadwell runs our adult Taos program, which is Town Open Water Swim Training. And that's to help adults who want to get into competing with open water swim, like triathlons or maybe races, or they're just really fit and they want to get out in the open water. And he averages about 27 people per session. He runs 2 sessions in the summer. The first one this year, 25, second one at 29. So, like I said, our program just expands basically all ages. What's not on here, we also start our training programs indoors in March every year at the YMCA. And those numbers are pretty staggering too. This year for the junior lifeguard training evaluation testing program at the Y, that's ages 9 to 14, we had 349 kids during the course of that program between March and June. And for the Nippers, ages 6 to 8, we had 189. So this program starts in a couple of months. We start getting going again. And it just runs for a lot of the year. So that just gives you an idea of what goes on also pre-season for the programs. And we're very proud of our programs. And,
I'm proud of the programs too.
Johnny makes us look really good.
I saw how you looked at each other saying this starts in a couple of months.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm already.
Yeah, early March, right?
Yeah,
New Year's ends and we start.
It's a brand.
Exactly. So 2 of the things that we mentioned here that just to expand upon, the town started installing cameras into many of our beach comfort stations, and the amount of vandalism down this year was tremendously lowered on the major vandalism on there then too, which is a cost savings by having the deterrent of the camera systems there. And it's also just for public safety up there then too. Next, one of the things we didn't necessarily touch on, but have didn't touch on in the past, I want to thank the residents of Montauk specifically then too, because there was 2 major beach replenishment projects here that occurred about a year ago, one being the FEME project that brought nearly 400,000 cubic yards of sand to the beach. What we saw there is that the beaches were broader and wider, and specifically down at Kirk Park Beach, which actually had a great large increase for people that like to sit on the beach at Kirk Park because it was so wide and broad like they hadn't seen in 30 years on there. The other one was to the board, and thank the board for supporting the requests of many of the residents out in Montauk specifically, was to replenish the Dish Plain Beach to make it a recreational beach by top dressing the sand on there, because we know it's such an iconic location for individuals to enjoy. With all of that, that also then allowed the town lifeguards to make sure they place their lifeguarding stand in the appropriate locations based on some of the known traditional rips that are out there. So I thank you both for that. We're going to our recommendations and actions for the 2025 season. Lifeguards, wound packing, and tourniquet kits were received late in the 24 season, and in 25, these kits will be deployed in all first aid kits, and lifeguards will receive additional annual first aid training for their use. I believe you're even doing CPR maybe tomorrow, John, also. So concentrating year long, but we also want to make sure they have the appropriate first responder medical equipment needed there too. Dogs. Pet owners failed to pick up a lot of doggy bags, which were consistently washing up on the shores of high tide. Dogs have not been prevented from urinating in the area posts, lifeguard stands, lifeguard equipment, and lifeguards' personal property. Dogs control and regulations at bathing beaches should be discussed and updated for the 25 seasons as needed. We'll discuss this internally in our group. I know we had that discussion offhand last season, and I know that is a subject that would produce interest to the residents. Parking. With the growing population of bathers at the lifeguard public bathing beaches and the lack of available parking at these beaches, there should be a discussion and consideration for opening another public bathing beach. We've stated this multiple times yearly. It's challenging to do, very challenging to do. But in addition to creating another safety guarded beach, lifeguard presence there would provide quicker response times to swimmers in distress calls. No worries. On here, very simply, that's me.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Oh, you want me to get closer? That's not a problem. I can closer to the microphone. Great. Always swim near lifeguards, be respectful of others, and clean up your litter. Those are the ABCs of some of our beaches. Part of this presentation, which is on the town board's website on our meeting information, you'll see the next slides and some of the appendixes, which gives our approximate bathers by protected beaches on there, where the majority of all the bathers are going. Next slide. Bather attendance by beach, and many different graphs that Lieutenant Jeff Thompson has assisted on. And last one, if you don't mind. And I think that is that correct? Injuries and more. This is a very comprehensive bathing report that we have on our website. There's a lot. Thank you very much. You can just take that down. What we're saying is there's a lot of information that's public facing. The lifeguards you see there protecting our beaches, the staff as far as collecting the refuse, which is always difficult to do, then to maintaining our comfort stations to appropriate standards also, and just cleaning our beaches. None of this could have happened without the wonderful staff of the town of East Hampton. Okay, the town of East Hampton staff works tremendously hard to actually provide some of the greatest services for some of the most beautiful beaches in the world that we have here. We understand that, but we also can't do that without the respect and also without the input from the residents to what their needs are in their community then too. We work very hard as a town board, but also as staff members of the town working for the residents to provide these services, the ones that we come to cherish and enjoy. I hope you all get to enjoy that. And with that, that is the conclusion of our 2024 beach season report. Any questions? We're here.
Yeah, the other point I was going to make is that I know folks earlier in the comments as they should be concerned where tax dollars go. We spend $1.1 million in lifeguard salaries so that we can keep our beaches open and protected. So just to give the community context for what services cost in this town, and we're forever grateful for all that you folks do to keep our beaches safe and our kids trained, and whether they go on to go through the programs, junior lifeguard, nippers, whether they go on to be lifeguards or not, we know they're safer at the beach because they've gone through those programs.
Yeah, I went to a conference in. I went to a conference in Hawaii. Tough conference. No, but it was probably one of the
Johnny.
probably one of the best conferences I've ever gone to, and they have a Beach Guardian workshop there, and that Beach Guardian workshop was basically lifeguards teaching the community how to be water safe, and it's amazing to think that we're doing it here. We are a benchmark to other agencies, and it constantly comes up. Even John McGeehan, who's ex-chief of Montauk, left here. He's building a program in Rincon, Puerto Rico right now, modeling it after what you have provided this community with, the programs and the waterproofing that community down there.
Yeah, I just want to thank you so much for the safety you give to everyone who comes here. When I look at these numbers, 138,628 beach patrons, you're managing a city that happens to be in front of a water resource that you need to be prepared for. And we have so many folks that come out here that aren't beachgoers in general or don't live in a coastal area like we do. And the education and the human services that you and John provide is certainly, when you talk about budgeting and we talk about money and what the town's spending on money spent on helping humans and protecting humans, it's invaluable. And it's a small price to pay for helping our citizens and our visitors live here safely and enjoy what we all can enjoy. And more what, we have a struggle for the regular folks to be able to enjoy. Our beaches are free, and it's an amazing asset that you guys are to our community, and I want to thank you so much. I'm also falling over at the litter.
Yeah,
Tom.
I saw you made a note.
Yeah, 121,000 pounds of litter. That's a number that we need to discuss more. I'd like to get some more information on how the town processes that and what goes on with that. And I know a lot of that needs to be picked up by hand because it's not properly disposed of. So again, these are departments that, you don't see in the news every day. They're not the sexy departments that get everybody talking, but they're the departments that do the hard work for this town. And I'm very grateful to all of you.
Yeah, I would just echo that. And I think we often talk about the environment being one of the keys, but it's the recreation within the environment. And our beaches are critical. And having them safe and well guarded is, that's what gets people going, and that's what gets people coming out here. So the investment we make in your department to do this is critical to the well-being of the town. And, John, both John, sorry, I see you at all hours. I see you at all kind of venues, training little kids. You've trained my kids many times. The job you guys do is absolutely phenomenal. So I can't thank you enough. Thank you.
I think one of the things that's missing is also, the proof is in the pudding. For Chris Chinquay, he was named the New York State Lifeguard of the Year this year. That doesn't happen every year. That doesn't happen often. So to have that happen in our township, it shows the quality of the lifeguards and the team that we have been able to put together to not just train, but also to maintain and too. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
130,000 visitors, 130,000 lives saved. Yeah.
So next up, we have the proposed amendment to Chapter 91 Beaches and Parks. Charlie, thanks for joining us today to start this discussion.
Okay. If you don't mind, if I could just touch off 1 second here. Let me just get mine here first. Apologize about that. No, it's the next one. And I don't even know where it is, but I know for her pretty well. So hopefully, thank you so very much. Thank you very much, Madam Supervisor. I have Charlie Collins with us, Assistant Town Attorney, and working with Assistant Town Attorney Nick Cortesides, Town Attorney Rob Connolly, Tina Lagaren, Brian Frank, and Tim Treble from the Planning Department. They took a deep look into initiative to try to stop individuals and to be able to enforce individuals from crossing over the dunes at locations that weren't properly marked or properly authorized then too. Why is this important? When sand paths start to be created in locations that aren't deemed appropriate, they start to provide vulnerability to our greatest coastal defense system, and that is our primary dune system right now. Example, this summer, after the Montauk fireworks, I believe I was quoted stating they looked like there were ants on the dunes because of the dozens and hundreds of people that are on our dune systems in Montauk, but also at other locations that we see. Part of what in discussing this with Senior Harbor Master Tim Treadwell, is that there's not an enforcement mechanism in the code to be able to enforce, ticket, and then adjudicate this. So we came up with some potential changes to the town code in Chapter 91 that would be able to enforce the initiative. Also part of Chapter 91 is that this was potentially presented, it has to be presented to the town trustees, as Chapter 91 has to be changed only in authority of both the majority of the town trustees and the town board. I believe they might have discussed it even last night. They'll be reviewing this for some more comments, but this is our first blush at some of this draft legislation. And Charlie, I thank you so very much for your assistance.
No problem. So again, that was great synopsis of what's going on, but the section of code is section 91-4. And the proposed change is pretty minimal, just sort of an addition, but we'll go through it. Section 91-4, prohibited conduct. A, no person shall damage, deface, injure, remove, tamper with, or destroy any legal town or trustee sign, snow fencing, flagging, or other property located on the beach or the landward dunes of that beach. So this is just bringing dunes and making sure everyone knows that dunes are part of the protected area. And dunes is a defined term within this section of the code. C, no person shall throw, place, or deposit fill, sand, gravel, or any other materials, including but not limited to trees, shrubs, or brush on the beach or dunes, unless properly authorized by the trustees or town board.
And most of that language is always there. We're just making
Yes,
sure.
yeah. The only addition is adding dunes. So people, you can't just throw stuff in the dunes and get away with it. Section E. No person shall maintain a camp, trailer, or other structure, whether temporary or permanent, on the beach, and then added, or landward dunes. And then this section R is completely new and added to the code. And no person shall walk through or cross over any dune unless at a location authorized by the town trustees or town board, including but not limited to elevated walkways, stairways, other specifically designed dune crossing structures, or designated footpaths. And that is the extent of the proposed changes, and this would allow, as David said, code enforcement to cite and issue a violation for anybody, impinging on these rules.
That is correct. So that's the primary discussion on there. Again, looking at chapters of Chapter 255, we thought it was best to put it into Chapter 91 for beaches on there. Then too, this the authority lays within the town board, but also within the town trustees at their beaches. And pretty much what we're trying to do here, straight and simple, we want to keep people to the designated historical footpaths that we have currently already. Then too, if we can do that, instead of actually making other gaps in our primary dune system, we're going to be safer from coastal resiliency. And we're going to make sure that the environment, as far as our shrubbery, our beach grass, is going to stay in place, and that just makes us safer and more environmentally protective of our dunescapes. But there's still going to be others that aren't aware of that, and when they flaunt that, their ability to flaunt that to town officials, being code enforcement or a Marine Patrol, this gives the Marine Patrol or code enforcement the backing to cite them for a violation of the code. So it's a little bit simple additions there that might have a very meaningful response in the end. Then too, we can do this appropriately with additional signage and methodologies as we go, but we needed to do this section of the code first. Yeah. So for that, it's for open discussion.
So I think this is super necessary with what we see the damage being done. I mean, this is because we are seeing more folks not stay to the traditional paths, but just walk over the dunes. And also when they do so, they're trampling the beach grass, which then kills the beach grass. It's trampled or it's smothered by this activity. So I think this is very necessary. Thank you for bringing it forward. And I just want to know if, in terms of when we're calling things dunes, if you would just add primary dune and on the beach, primary dunes or landward dunes, just to distinguish that there's also that primary dune that should be included.
In A.
In anywhere, in R and E, just to make sure we're covering that. In A. So there's the beach, which is the berm of the beach, but then there's also that primary dune. Just to point it out even.
Okay, I'll bring it
further.
up. Thank you.
I would echo. I mean, I think this is great legislation that's needed. I think your point about signage is key here. I think, maybe new signage on those designated pathways to really educate people as to why we're doing this is necessary in conjunction.
So just to add to that, so I actually have some templates of the signage. I like to find myself in Block Island sometimes with my wife having a mudslide, I do have to say. Celebrating our anniversary at times. And they actually have some nice appropriate signage at some of their beaches, like their Crescent Beach, in which it tells why beach vegetation is important. And I'll send it around to the board and we can discuss other methodology, but I completely agree with you, Tom. That's a very critical step to the compliance. Let's educate individuals why it's important instead of just penalizing them. Let's give them the chance to comply first.
Yeah, I'm supportive of all the changes.
And we have Patrick here, our public information officer, so that we can do that next as we approach next season. Because how many times have you seen families where the little kids have run ahead and they want to be up high and they're like rolling down the dune, and not only can it be destructive to the dune, but they could be picking up all kinds of ticks and whatnot.
Yeah, let's
being
talk
up
about
there.
tick education.
So I think education is key.
Agreed. So what I will do here, if you don't mind, to the board members, I will bring that primary dune back to the group that's been assisting me with this. I'll wait for Francis Bach, the clerk of the trustees, if there's any comments from them. And I'll bring this back maybe in a liaison report to the town board as we move forward. Reason why we're trying to do this now at this stage, summer 2025 is around the corner, everyone. It's a joke, but
It's true. Planning starts already.
yeah. Thank you very much.
All right,
And that's all we have.
thanks,
Charlie, thank you very much. I appreciate
So
that.
we're going to keep Charlie there because we have an urban renewal parcel that he wants to introduce to us. I know, Patrick, if you could pull up, you want to start with existing?
Sure.
The map,
That's
and
the
just
existing.
talk us through this, Charlie?
Yeah, so lots 20 and 18, this is an urban renewal. This is on sheet SP6. It's an old file map 877. It's number 20 is 41 Roosevelt Avenue, which is off of Harborview Lane in Springs. The adjacent property, number 18, is also owned by the same owner, and they would like to, that one is vacant currently, and he would like to merge the lots to give him a little more space. 18 is a pretty tight lot as it is. It was sent to so it become one lot total.
Right.
So one less building lot. Interestingly, number 20 already has 2 houses on it. So pre-existing zoning, it's an old property, but it will become one lot and take one building lot out of this old filed map. Minor change would be the change of the location of the access point. If you want to show what it will look like after the change. So just one lot, and the access point will be moved to take access off of Roosevelt Avenue. There is that's the application that was brought to me, just to merge the 2 lots. Pretty simple. While I was reviewing the urban renewal map, a couple other things came up on this map that I will eventually, it hasn't gone to the engineer yet, I've spoken to the engineer about it, but he hasn't written up anything, and planning hasn't seen it or anything like that yet. But there's a few other.
Planning board has already seen this.
Yeah,
correct?
planning board's already seen it. Engineer signed off on it. Planning department has reviewed it as well. It would take.
So there's 2 structures on the property, 2 residences?
Yes.
So that was predate zoning?
Yes.
So just so that everyone knows, with the merger, they wouldn't be able to have a 3rd structure on that.
No, they could now. You
Right.
could build a house on 18 now.
Right.
But now it would be taken out of that. So now it will be one less buildable lot in that neighborhood.
That's great.
So Charlie, if you don't mind, I believe there's a colonial cemetery that backs up
Yes,
onto this
there
property
is.
on there then too. And I believe it also has its own separate tax map on it.
Yes, if you to the south of 20A, I don't know. There is a tiny little cemetery. If you look at the aerials, I don't know if you
Yeah,
have
I
that,
think
but
it's
you
on
can see
here.
it has its own tax map. It's a separate lot within that lot.
That's good news on there. If it didn't, even though it might be encapsulated by a neighboring property.
Yeah.
That is part of the recommendations for colonial cemeteries is to get their own separate tax maps on it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
one of the
So
reasons I
that's
mentioned it.
Yeah, the property, the map, I don't know, these maps were drawn in the 70s, so they were kind of, I think some people, I don't know, obviously I wasn't around, but they didn't really take into account necessarily the full picture when they drew these maps all the time. So there's the property with the cemetery, like right now where that access on the existing access would drive right through the cemetery. So that was just not thought of. So that's why we're just moving the access point. It's really, if the aerial, is the memo on there?
There's an aerial and it looks like a red triangle. That's the cemetery, it looks
That's
like
the
to me.
cemetery.
Yeah.
That's right. That's all I wanted to mention. Thank you very much.
So that's the cemetery. But yeah, so that's why I'm looking more into the accesses and trying to get this to.
I think that's appropriate because you're not disturbing. Where individuals had been interned potentially hundreds of years ago.
Yes. So that's So then I'm proposing to put this on for a public hearing based on the timing of the holidays. It probably won't be until mid-January.
Yeah, I'm supportive. I think it's good for the applicant or the homeowner, and it's also taking away a potentially new structure. So I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, that question. Yeah, I look forward to bringing the public hearing. It makes it a lot more conforming to what the zoning is to there, and let's see what the public says.
Okay. All right.
I agree as well.
Thank you.
So the supervisor had to step out for a minute. Any other questions on this topic? So we can slowly move to the next topic until she gets back. And in that, I think I'll just give some background on why this is a topic for today. If board members recall, we've had discussions in work session and 2 public hearings on the additional alternative board members, both for the ZBA, Zoning Board of Appeals, and for the Architectural Review Board. So we've discussed this before, and this has to do with what is the process and what happens in today's times when a board member of one of the ARB or a ZBA board member can either has a conflict of interest and must recuse themselves from the public hearings and the application itself, all discussions of the application. And when board members take vacations, they are allowed to do that as far as I remember, but very few. Or they have illnesses. And some, we see on the zoning board some short illnesses, a week or 1 meeting, and then some, we've seen some longer term illnesses where people have been out for months. So the town attorney's office reviewed other municipalities in New York State and reviewed these different types of codes that they had for appointing alternative members, and then the process of how they would be brought up to be part of an application formally onto either of the boards. And therefore we're also, so that's where we are today. Now that you're here, that's just the background. And now I just wanted to go over a couple of things. Some of the callers in who are board members, I was on the zoning board for 9.5 years. David, you've been a zoning board member. Ian, you were on the planning board. So the reason some folks spoke about in the past, and when I was first on the board, 2003, before there was actually recordings, there was only tape recordings, audio tape recordings, you could come back and review either the videotape or the audio recording if you were absent. However, as we know with everything else in the world, it's not 2003 anymore and times have changed. And we know that the strength of our determinations rely on the integrity of our determinations. And part of our determinations that are written at the end of an application and decisions that are made are based on, in my opinion, a full 5-member board. I think in these times, the applicant deserves that. And I also think in terms of litigation, a 5-member board takes away the idea of a 2-2 denial. a 2-2 decision, opposing decision, which is an automatic denial, everybody has to go back to the starting point on that. Those are challenged in court quite frequently. And usually what happens in that case, and Rob, I'm sorry to speak for the attorney's office, so if you could back me up here, those are referred back to the board and the process has to begin again. So it's basically a waste of taxpayers' dollars and a waste of applicants' dollars if we don't have full boards for these public hearings. So then this memo, then we've already had the two public hearings that were merged on this, so we're looking more now to talk about amongst ourselves process, which is different from codifying the law. So there are a number of suggestions here that have been brought forth to us by our attorney's office, and we could walk through them one at a time and have a discussion if that's the way you'd like to go.
I think that's best.
Can I just clarify one thing?
Sure.
In here, I looking at the last bullet point, and it was questioned by a couple of the callers. I inartfully drafted that bullet point. What I meant in bullet point 5 was that if a regular member or an alternate member sits through the entire application and it gets down to the point where a decision is going to be made and all of a sudden there's a different member sitting for the decision. I was asking if the board thinks that the applicant should have the right to ask for an adjournment of that meeting to allow for the member who had been sitting through the entire application to be the one who deliberates and makes the decision.
I think that I think we've had that, David, where applicants have asked the chair and if there was a member absent for, it depends on the clock, the 62-day clock. So I would say in the situations where you're up against a 62-day clock, then the alternative member would take it to the end. Because there is a time constraint on determinations, and that's something to consider as well, but we should talk about all of that. So the first one that we're talking about is, should alternate members be required to attend all meetings? And these questions are based on the different codes that we saw in New York State for towns that do have alternate members. Should alternate members be required to attend all meetings, even when all regular members will be present? Or should alternate members be required to attend meetings when a regular member will be absent or recused from the consideration of an application? I have thoughts.
I do too.
Go for it, Kate.
So I think for continuity and for simplification of the process, alternate members, and I just want to be clear that the code says that up to 2 alternate members can be appointed. It doesn't have to be 2 members. So it's an either alternate member or members. I think they should be required to attend all meetings. This way they have the full sense of the board's discussion, just as if the board member was sitting at the meeting. And if in the case where it's a quick absence, God forbid something happens, that process can still continue. I think it makes it complicated for folks to decide which meetings they're going to attend and which meetings they're not going to attend, and that even for the alternate member, that scheduling can mess you up if you don't know that every Tuesday you're going to be in a certain place at a certain time, and make it optional. So that's just my thoughts on that. Other board members?
Yeah, I slightly differ. I understand where you're coming from, but just a different perspective would be, I'd say that if an alternate board member is required to step in because another board member is absent for some reason, then yes, I think they should henceforth be required to attend all further meetings just in case they are required for that final vote. But I think the other side to it is that they can review the tape. They can review the LTV video of that meeting to get that information. So requiring to be at actually all meetings may not be necessary.
But then you don't get your questions asked, right? If you're sitting in and the applicant is there and the attorney's there and town planning staff are there and you have questions that you want clarified, you don't have the ability to do that if you're going back to look at a tape as opposed to you're present.
I agree. I think that goes to point number 2, and I think it relates to point number 2, and I get where you're coming from. I agree with that. I think it's how and when they can submit questions, I think, as an alternate is a relevant issue.
So just so folks know, I mean, when we put together the 2025 budget, we assumed that they would be attending every meeting. So we budgeted for that so that it's not like it's a part-time stipend. It's the full stipend because we thought at the time that they were going to be attending all meetings. I mean, because we've had situations where, yes, some folks say, they know that they take their vacation in June, so they can give you a heads up that they'll be missing those meetings. But we've also had situations where folks had an illness, just before they were ready to leave for for their meeting and weren't going to be able to attend. So my vote is for they're required to attend all meetings.
Yeah, I understand both sides there for sure, and I understand Tom's point, but I think if they're being paid as a full member, then they should be expected to be at every meeting and be ready to serve.
David?
So one of my greatest privileges of serving this town was being appointed and serving on the Zoning Board of Appeals. I remember when I first went on there, I had just been broken my hip. And to learn all the information that was given to me about Chapter 255, all the chapters of zoning and code was tremendous. And I think that's what you get from participating in every meeting. You necessarily don't even have to ask a question in a meeting, but you could just soak it in and learn from attorneys on both sides of the discussion, from planners, environmental analysts on both sides of the discussion. And that is something that I think provides value and provides for a stronger board member, as I enjoyed being coming, but also as a more educated and informed determination on there then too. There's also allowances within the town code if that board member can't make it for a certain reason that they can actually do something remotely also then too. So for those reasons, to try to strengthen a board member and also to strengthen the rapport of the board as a whole, I would say I would also support being present all the time.
Okay. So it sounds like we've got the consensus is.
Sure, what you're trying to edit.
Of course you're not.
No,
So the consensus is they would be required to attend all meetings. So the next question, may an alternate member ask questions and submit input when not appointed to replace an absent member?
My thoughts are no. Then I think you're expanding the board de facto. You have a board that has, in our code, we have 5 members of a board. Mm-hmm. And for an alternative member then to come in and join the questioning and answering, if they're haven't been selected as an alternate member, it expands the board, I think, beyond the scope of what we're intending to do here.
I agree with Kate on that. I think that I feel pretty strongly about this one, that they should not be able to ask questions or interact or influence the process in any way unless they're actively serving.
Again, I'm just going to offer a different perspective on it, which is to say that there could be the case where an existing board member is in the first 3 meetings and then steps out. I think allowing that alternate member to be fully engaged in the process and ask relevant questions is going to deliver a better final outcome.
So on a zoning board, it's not 3 meetings. People
Right.
aren't coming back. It's a public hearing. So you prepare for the public
But
hearing.
ARB?
They come back and forth a little bit more. But again, we have a code that says we have X amount of board members deciding on something. And I don't know if that would be consistent with that. If alternative members, before they're actually asked to sit on the board because somebody's missing, wouldn't be a 6th or 7th member. I would need a legal opinion on that.
Yeah, I think it would be inconsistent with if the. I do know that other municipalities in the area do allow alternate members to opine on applications, but especially it does lead to questions with when the determination is written, if there's some of the opinions of the alternate member in the decision when they weren't asked to actually be the voting member, it could lead to challenges in an Article 78. So I think it's safer to allow only sitting members to vote on
And participate. Yeah, because that goes with the next one too. They're kind of together.
That certainly makes sense to me. I think if a question was asked that, changed the mind of other board members and that can be demonstrated, that seems problematic.
Before the supervisor goes, you might be the third vote here. I agree with what Tom is saying there, to have engaged members at all parts of the application, I think is important then too. But I understand what Rob is saying as far as the legal aspect of it then too. I would prefer it this way, but I understand legally if it might not be the most prudent thing to do.
Yeah, I think that only the 5 that are tasked with reviewing that application should be asking questions. So if the alternate is not engaged because someone hasn't recused or been out sick or on vacation, I don't think that they should have the ability to ask questions. Because part of it too is we live in such a litigious community when it comes to some of our zoning board applications. I think we need to make sure that it's just the 5 that are by code that are should be listening, making the determinations. So we're going to answer no to that. Next question is, may an alternate member be permitted to vote only when a regular member is absent or recused?
Yes, because then you have too many votes. So if you have, again, we're codified for 5 members of a zoning board because of the size of our community. So how do you have 6 votes? Which one counts? And which one doesn't count? I think that's just
right. I think this is this is a very simplistic question in the sense that if you're, if one member has been recused, sick, or on vacation, if that alternate is, the 5th member, then that 5th, the alternate votes on the application.
Yeah, I guess the question here would be if you had 2 alternates. And they've both been required to, you're picking one. I think this is fine. I think
so. Just so you know, we only budgeted for 1 alternate because I think we've never had alternates before. So I thought that the thought was the code allows up to 2, but at this point we would only be looking to appoint 1 alternate
for each board,
for the ARB and 1 alternate for the ZBA.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think that it's obvious they could only vote if they were, recused, if another member was recused or absent. But I do think there's maybe further discussion to be had about, does an absent, member automatically mean that they're replaced? And I think that'll be debated later. I mean, if somebody is ill for one day and going to miss one meeting, but has been engaged in an application for a period of time, it may not be appropriate to replace them. I would say only after, 2 meetings, or in the case of a zoning board, if it's a public hearing, you need an active member there, so that would be different. But if it was something that was drawn out for a long time and a regular member was engaged and then only missed one meeting for some reason, they might not be replaced in that case.
Okay. So my feeling is that if someone is absent, and just let's think of the record and process for a minute when we talk about this and subsequent court cases. So what would that look like? You'd have one, let's talk about I'm out.
Let's say that we're the ZBA.
Okay, yeah, and I'm out for the public hearing, or I'm out for the ARB discussion, and so my alternate comes up, and Chris Walsh is my alternate, and he comes up, and he sits in, and he participates in a discussion, and he gives his opinion, opines on the decision, but then I come back because I was only sick that 1 week, and now I have a different set of conclusions. What's what, and how do we? I just want to, since we're doing this the first time, for me to keep it clean, as simple as possible. And maybe it's not the same for the ARB as the ZBA. Maybe there can be, a different idea, but I'm speaking directly for the ZBA, where it's a public hearing, and then there's no ex parte communication. The hearing is either continued, and in that case, I still think the person whoever sat on the public hearing and participated should shepherd that application and make the determination, just so the record, how would the record look? This person participated in the hearing, but then this person participated at the work session and the deliberation, how do you build a clear and direct record that can stand up for that?
Just to clarify my comments, I agree with you. It should be either there's somebody who's subbing an alternate or not. It should not go back and forth. I just mean I can anticipate some cases, say an A or B application where there were several meetings, somebody's there for 2 of them, it's nearing the end. I don't know if the chair designates an alternate when they serve or when they don't, but you may wish not to replace them at that point, even though they're absent from 1 meeting. I think once the replacement is made, the alternative steps in, they're in.
Charlie, could you comment on that? To the scenario that, because since you're the attorney to the A or B?
Yeah, so repeat that again, like what? ARB is very different than ZBA.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, in both, I'm more familiar with planning where it's a more of a long-term process with several meetings often per application. I realize ARB and zoning board are often fewer meetings, so it may be less of an issue. But if a regular member has been engaged in an application for, a meeting or 2 and just happens to miss a meeting because of illness or something, but would be back for a vote, and I think that would be up to the chairperson to decide, I don't think we should automatically make that replacement. I think once you do, the alternate is in and you don't go back if that person comes back. So I think a decision gets made and you stick with it, but I could see it going both ways in different cases.
Yeah, I mean, ARB, practically speaking, it probably wouldn't really come up because generally, I mean, if it's something simple like a sign, a business sign, it is 2 meetings max. 3 is like crazy.
Right.
So, and it's usually, it's kind of more of a work to get to a point, more like planning, I would say, where by the time they're doing an approval, it's generally, in my experience, almost always approved. So it's never, I mean, it depends. It would be interesting if there was a full building, like a full redevelopment of a property in ag overlay, for instance, or historic district, I would probably say if the member was there and heard the initial and the second and they couldn't make the third, I think, I don't know, it would be I would leave it up to the chair.
That's what I would think.
Yeah.
And then,
I would say, and then because every application is very different, fact specific, and some of them, it might just be, the chair might feel like, well, we got 3 votes anyway, so what's the point of delaying it if it's going to pass no matter what, or fail.
Or if it were a meeting where a vote was taking place, you might want to have a replacement to make sure you have the full board in that case. But if it was, the meeting before a vote was taking place and somebody had already been a part of the previous 2, you might want to let them be the voting member when that comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've had a couple times since I've been on where we had one member was sick or traveling, or one person was traveling and we knew that, but then someone was sick. So then you only have 3 members. That's when you're like, oh, we need someone. If you're at 4 with ARB, I'm less concerned about there being an issue, like a 2-2 split, but it could happen. But generally what happens at ARB is they don't usually vote to deny. They usually say, you got to come back with some changes, come back at a later date. And then, it would be more, I think ARB would be really one where if someone has to recuse, we'd have someone step in at the beginning. Or if somebody is absent that day, someone could step in. And then I think the easiest would be, like we discussed, would be they're in charge the rest of the time. The situation that you propose with somebody, it's in the 3rd meeting and somebody shows up sick, I think I would just let the chair decide how they want to proceed.
And I think it's written that way, isn't it? The chair may designate, not shall designate.
May designate.
Yeah.
So I think that gives the ARB some leeway there.
So what we're saying, it's really not one size fits all.
Right.
There's
gonna be
ZBA
hard.
and
Yeah,
ARB
ZBA
are
is
going to
different.
have different operating procedures for alternates.
Yeah, I think an absence doesn't necessitate a replacement. The chair decides that, but once a replacement is,
I think
For the ARB.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If somebody steps in, then
they're in.
Then they're in.
Yeah.
Right.
Because then if they hear it, if somebody's like, here's the initial, then fills in for the second one, then the first person comes back, it's just kind of like, just you take over and then, that makes sense to me.
Can we talk about recusal for him? Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And just like you pointed out, Kate, the ZBA is up against hard time deadlines, there's 62 days, ARB isn't. So I think it makes more sense.
Yeah, and I would, with ARB too, I would probably as a courtesy to the applicant, I'd be like, what do you want to do? This person's not here. You don't have to come today. We can postpone it to next week or 2 weeks down, if you would prefer to wait for this person to either be back from vacation or, not sick. Yeah, we don't have the 62 day deadline on ARB. It's much more fluid. It's more of and they're not public hearings. They're generally not public hearings. It's more of a work session. So people can come, they can discuss. ARB gives their comments. We send in a complete letter. They come back with a new application. I mean, not every time, but majority of the time, it's usually they do what they were asked or, address the issues that were raised. And then the applicant is then processed. But occasionally it does go to 3 or 4. But I try to keep that from happening because it takes too long.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Then we've been talking about absences, but conflict of interest and recusals, that's also written into our town code. We just had a training session where the elements of conflict of interest were pretty well spelt out for our board members, and that usually happens before the public hearing, that discussion?
Yes.
Okay, so that would give plenty of time for the chair to appoint the alternate member.
I think that's chapter 25 of the town code.
For ethics, yeah.
All right, here. So when an alternate member fills in, if a board member is absent for some reason and the proposed application is presented and reviewed at the meeting, it is possible and likely that the vote might not take place until a future meeting. Should the alternate member be permitted to vote in the situation? I think we just discussed that.
I think we took care of.
We just took care of. Yep.
4.
Okay.
Actually.
So then the last one, should the applicant have the right or ability
To adjourn, basically, is what
to
we're saying.
request that a certain member, either regular or alternate, deliberate on its application where both have been present for and participated in the consideration of its application? And this is the one where you said that it may have gotten misconstrued. What you're saying is we're giving the applicant the ability to
adjourn the decision if the member who sat through the lion's share of the presentation isn't available on the day that the determination is to be rendered.
I'm going to question that because in terms of guardrails, how do you know there's not, the alternate member was more in favor, I got the idea that the alternate member was more in favor of my application, so I'm going to ask for that person or vice versa.
Right.
So how do we prevent that from happening? That's where I think on the ZBA, this is different from the ARB. If you were there from the beginning, you should stick through to the end. Or if you came in at a certain point, maybe a situation where a member was there for the public hearing, but was absent for the work session and determination. That's where it gets a little dicey to me. Because again, we definitely want to avoid the situation, and we don't have predetermined determinations. These are discussed in public, and then the board comes to consensus in public like we do, so we don't know it beforehand. The biggest thing we want to avoid is that 2-2 deadlock that gets sent to court, sent back, and wastes everybody's money. So I don't know how we cover that.
No, I think that's a fair point. And, that's why with when you're in court, you're not allowed to forum shop and try to go to a judge that's going to be more favorable to you. So
to me, it's a shared determination.
Right, exactly.
I mean, my only concern would go back to the earlier point about being able to, alternate members being able to ask questions, because if you have an alternate member who does come in at some point and they haven't had the opportunity to ask questions, does that then expose the vote to, not being compliant because this board member's voted without fully having vetted all the questions they might have?
You say that again?
Sure. So my concern would be, say you have an alternate that comes in,
A or B or ZBA?
say CBA in this case, more litigious typically. They weren't initially in, but then they're in, but they've not been allowed to ask a question by the time it gets to the vote on the matter.
During the public hearing, they weren't allowed to.
Exactly, but they are yet now voting on this. Does that then expose the town to any potential litigious actions?
I don't think so, because I think they're still allowed, if they're going to be doing the deliberation, they're still able to express what the substance of their question would be during the deliberation.
The questions are for the ZBA. I mean, you have the town code, you have variance applications. Usually in the public hearings, you have the applicant comes in with the best mitigation. It's laid out. There's not a lot of, there's questioning of if that's possible, can you do more mitigation? But I don't think it's the same thing as the ARB where you can question colors and other things, but I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking if an alternate issued a denial on an issue, but, and said, I'm doing it on this, but they hadn't actually asked the applicant the question at any point, that would be my only concern there, so it's like you've got to the voting point and you're saying, well, I'm not approving this, because this question hasn't been answered to my satisfaction, but you've never really asked the question.
So usually when you close a hearing now, you have those set. You don't. So when you're on the zoning board, you may think, oh, I should have asked that. But that doesn't, you still are going by 5 standards. So the zoning, your determinations are not based on basically only the questions you asked. It's based on a set of standards that are codified. There's 5 of them. And that's how your board members should be basing their determination based on the merits of the application, the mitigations possible, and adherence to those 5 standards. It's quite clear.
Yeah,
as opposed to the planning board where you can finagle that a little bit.
Yeah, I understand Tom's concerns for sure. I think, but to Kate's point, the record is the record, and whether you had been serving or just now serving, you really shouldn't introduce, our attorneys would say, new reasoning as to why you're doing something or not.
Right.
So I think that does restrict the alternate a little bit. But as Kate said, even a regular member might come up with something. And so it's not a perfect balance, but I feel much more comfortable with only having 5 members at a given time trying to steer the process. I do think in no case should an applicant be able to choose which members sit on there. I mean, that would be ridiculous, I think. But I think that there might be something more nuanced, which it would be appropriate if they know there's only going to be 4 board members there and that they could ask for a full board or as close to a full board as the members and alternates allow. So if 2 people are recused, they could make sure at least 1 alternate was sitting on a voting day. I think that that's fair. I think that's the whole point of this legislation. And so that wouldn't conflict, I think, what the chair wanted to do, but I wouldn't mind explicitly saying that they could adjourn a meeting to postpone it when there would be a more full board the next time.
And again, as long as you're within the 62 days.
Well, I think if they're requesting it, then it would not. The 60 days.
They would have to waive it.
Because otherwise there'd be a case here where the chair had to make a decision, oh my God, we're going to run out the clock, but that means we're not going to have a full board because 2 people aren't available, and that would be I think, a legal problem.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Rob, if it would be possible to have your office, synthesize what we agreed to today. So we had like standard operating procedure for the ZBA and for the ARB.
Absolutely.
So that, because we're, ideally, I know Kate's got the legislation, and just somebody else made a comment about the timing on this. We did hear it this summer, but it only made its way to the planning board in October, and we only received their memo in November. So that's why we brought it up today.
And also I'd like to take full responsibility for the fact that it wasn't posted timely. That was totally on me. I dropped the ball on that one, getting ready for the 17th. So there was nothing untowardly about that. I simply dropped the ball.
Okay, so that concludes our topics. So we can now go to liaison reports.
Right. So I'll start off with the Amagansett Citizens Advisory Committee. Obviously, we heard a bit today. There was some very in-depth discussion around the senior center. Just general voice that they still have major concerns with, the financials and the design of the project itself. We also talked a little bit about the lighting update. There's a request, and I'm going to go back to LKMA on this, but, while they've initially said they didn't want the full lighting to extend past Meeting House Lane, there's some discussion now as to should there be any kind of lower footpath lighting between that point and the station, particularly this time of year. The superintendent of the school was saying you have a lot of teachers walking the station at 5 o'clock. It is dark in that area. And, the surface is not entirely even, so the lighting could potentially be a safety issue. So I'll be following up with LKMA on that. We also discussed Cranberry Hole Bridge. So one thing that some members of the committee have kind of put forward is, would it be possible potentially for it not to be a bridge and for it to be a level crossing? And there's actually some benefits to this, which is as the bridge was in its previous state, even when functional, fire trucks couldn't actually go over it, nor could ambulances. And so, that potentially impacts safety of residents in that area, whereas a level crossing, that they could access that area more easily. Potentially, it's also a cheaper option. So it's something that, I'd like to kind of get feedback from the MTA on whether they see that as being a possibility, because the bridge is obviously taking time in itself.
But they are in preliminary engineering, and there was an article in Newsday this week about the state of actually Long Island Railroad MTA bridges across Long Island.
Yeah.
And now with the congestion pricing going into effect, they're hoping that there's going to be funding available.
So is a bridge the right answer for that area, or is a level crossing the right answer for that area? I think it's one of the questions. So that's something that they're thinking about, and I think it might be worthwhile reaching out to some of the other community organizations out there to see what they see as the best solution for it, whether bridge or level crossing. Human services, we have going on this week. Tomorrow we have a movie at 10 a.m. It's one of my favorites, Plane, Trains, and Automobiles. Highly recommend. On the 17th, Spring School will be visiting the Senior Center at 11 a.m. for intergenerational games. And 11:30, the students will be putting on a holiday concert for the seniors. So thank you so much to Spring School for doing that. Monday, December 16th, the East Hampton Garden Club will be visiting the center and assisting 35 senior nutrition program members create holiday centerpieces. ADU implementation, we have a meeting on December 12th. I will be discussing with committee members as to whether they wish to continue that committee into 2025. Just the reasoning being, we've really gone through many elements of the code. We've come back with recommendations of what they would like to see changed. But beyond that, whether they see a continuing need for that
Sorry,
committee.
Tom, I missed what committee you said.
This is the ADU, accessory dwelling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, accessory dwelling units. Moving on to fire chiefs and commissioners. So just wanted to put a reminder out there to people, one of the town codes we have on there, which is 188.4, which is posting of numbers. The reason I'm bringing this up is that if there is an emergency response in the middle of the night and you don't have numbers on your property, PD and first responders will not know where to go to get you the help you need. And that's why this code was likely first introduced. So I'm just going to read this code out. Any owner of an improved land parcel in the town for which a street address number has been established pursuant to 188.3 shall post and display said number in the manner set forth in 188.5. For new construction, the street address number shall be posted and displayed within 5 days of the issuance of the building permit. No certificate of occupancy should be issued unless and until the street address number is posted and displayed in accordance with this chapter. It is unlawful to post or maintain any number on any construction site or completed building other than the street address number designated by the town assessor's office pursuant to 188.3. So the manner of display, just to kind of see what the code requires here. Style and size of numbers. The numbers, the numerals, letters, or script used to display the street address number on the building shall be either painted or made of metal or other durable material. The numerals, letters, or script shall be at least 4 inches in height with a minimum stroke of ½ an inch and of contrasting color to the background. All street address numbers shall be displayed so as to be easily seen from the street, both by pedestrians and drivers of vehicles. So this is for your safety, public. I do highly encourage you to adhere to that code, and it's something that, I will say as a first responder, does need reaction time.
And we can do a social media post about that.
Yeah. Great. Okay, moving on. Anti-bias task force will be meeting tomorrow afternoon. Disabilities Advisory Board will be meeting on the 19th. And that is everything from my liaison report.
Great. Thank you, Tom. David?
A couple updates here. Second house restoration project is fully moving forward. We should be able to have that complete very early in the new year now, and it's looking quite great then too. Army Corps of Engineer projects, the Montauk Inlet project then too. myself and town attorneys and Brian Frank met with some of the property owners that we were seeking easements over, try to make sure we have everything in place before that goes out to, Army Corps goes out to bid. So we're moving that forward too. Long Lane roundabout construction is moving forward rapidly then too, with the utilities moving all of their needed infrastructure out of the project scope area then too. Imported striped bass meetings, again, I mentioned this before. Atlantic Striped Bass Management Board is meeting on December 6th virtually. If you need any more information about that, please contact my office. I can get that over to you. Also, the 2025 Deer Lottery for the 2025 hunting season, which opens January 5th. I think that gets drawn. Excuse me. Carol, do you know when that gets drawn? I think everything has to be in no later than December 28th, 2024 on there. So please make sure if you're interested in that, get that contact information to us. In reference to the New York State Parks, response to Southern Pine Beetles, State Parks environmental team is on site today. They're finishing marking trees for the cutting contract, and they're waiting the DEC to issue a wetland permit for the work to begin. They had site visits this week with the contractor discussing staging areas and type of equipment to be used. They also are currently meeting as we speak with some of the members of the chiefs of the Springs Fire Department to discuss some of the cutting areas and the turnaround areas. Lastly, I know you hear this from me a lot also then too. It is a new sports season at Bonnick High School right now. Girls basketball is playing coached by Sam James. Boys basketball is being coached by, I believe, Dave Conlon this year, in his first year. And they have the Kendall Madison tournament this coming weekend. Kendall Madison was a stellar athlete. Fortunately, passed way too early. Star athlete, East Hampton High School, and played at UConn also then too. But the wrestling tournament at the Spring Garden tournament was this past weekend. Bonnick Wrestling is doing really, really well. And then let's take that down a level to middle school sports. I will be coming home and back out here for the Springs Osprey girls volleyball green team is playing Montauk Mustangs. So there's a lot of sport to be seen by some of these kids. Please go participate and cheer on the teams. It's fun to see everyone out there at this time of year. And please check out the athletic schedules on some of our local schools, districts' websites. That's all I have for today.
Great, thank you. Kate? Yes. As you know, the zoning code work group, I've already mentioned it, is preparing a presentation, a further discussion on gross floor area. That will be presented on next Tuesday, December 17th in the main meeting room. Also, I just want to address some of the comments that were made today, the false comparison of reducing a max GFA on a house to the senior center, and how that is an incredibly false comparison to make when you're talking about a structure that will service a family versus a structure that will service town residents and house an entire town department. I don't see how that comparison is valid in any way whatsoever. Also researching on Red Cross, designated Red Cross shelters. There is quite a lot of documentation that we've researched on this. Tom, I've given you this documentation. Also, my brother is a part of the Nassau County OEM and has been there since Sandy. And there's quite a lot of information on why the senior center could not be considered as a Red Cross shelter. Although it could be used for a very good purpose, since it would be large enough to let emergency responders stay there and rest there when they were in this location, which does not have all the designations of a Red Cross shelter, including separate dormitories, space for females and males to sleep in, separate distances from where a kitchen is, and no mechanicals in a basement.
We did some research back then when we talked about, I think it was here a couple months ago.
Yeah.
East Hampton High School is designated as an Red Cross emergency shelter. And does anybody want to guess how the size of in square feet, the East Hampton High School is?
75,000.
245,287 square feet. So that is the appropriate venue to be an emergency shelter for the town.
Also, the Red Cross will not put two shelters within such a close distance to each other. If anyone would bother to do the research on county shelters, you'll see that they're quite spaced out. The purpose of the emergency shelter is to shelter in place for a very short time. And it also takes that structure completely out of use for the community. So medications and additional uses for the senior center during an emergency, distribution of medications, meals continue to be cooked there. All of those elements would be removed from our abilities to recover after a storm, which we take quite seriously. Wayne-Scott Citizens Advisory Committee met last Saturday. They had a lovely breakfast before. It was the last meeting of the year for the WCAC. During the regular meeting, they spoke again of concerns of what's happening at the gun club and what will be happening in the future. They also discussed in length the historic designation of the Osborne property across the street, and had some ideas to come back and discuss. Some of the folks from the Wayne-Scott Heritage Group spoke at the public hearing, and they then had their elections. As far as the Ditch Dune project, Brian Frank, in coordination with the DEC, is now in the process of flagging the wetlands by Rhinestein Park as part of that will be part of the permit application when it gets formalized. Again, this is in cooperation with getting all the elements together with the DEC before the formal permit is put in. The DOS grant of $600,000 for coastal resiliency for Montauk, that meeting with our state contract managers got moved to a later date, and so I will have an update as soon as we speak with them. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Kate. Ian?
Yes, I'm very happy to report that the Welcome to Spring signs that have been being constructed are, the first one is up on Springs Fireplace. I want to thank Steve O'Brien, Tony Littman, who is the man who built them, and Dave Lease, the liaison of the department, for making it happen. They'll be placed on Springs Fireplace, 3 Mile Harbor, and Accabonac. Handmade out of wood and beautiful signs. So very happy to report that. The Property Management Committee will have a subcommittee meeting on Wednesday, December 18th to talk about the Dodge property, a management plan for that property. Excited to see that move forward. There's some beautiful historic structures there, and looking forward to figuring out how we're going to use that and eventually lead to a licensee. Also, I'd be remiss not to say that 66 Main Street in Wayne-Scott has 2 historic structures. We heard a lot about it the last work session. The Property Management Committee is looking forward to figuring out how to best maintain those buildings and what use they'll be to the town or a licensee. Just generally about the Property Management Committee, that more and more we are investing in historic structures, which I think is great for the character of our town. It's one of the beautiful things. But as a responsible board, I think we need to make sure that we maintain those and are proactive with maintenance and an eventual plan. And so I thank the whole committee for their work on that and look forward to working with them again next year. The Community Housing Advisory Board will also meet Wednesday on December 18th to go over. We heard from them last work session with recommendations to the RFAs that went out this year. They'll be recapping sort of this year and looking forward to how to improve their application process. And I just want to say that, well, I look forward to working with them on that, but I also want to open it up to anybody in the public who was an applicant, could have been an applicant, in ways that you think we might want to change that process. I know Chab has been very open to trying to receive all sorts of applications so we can, weigh all the different needs out there. And I just want to encourage public involvement to let us know how we can do better. Then just generally, I said this during my last liaison report, I think community involvement is so important, and I want to continue to reach out to more diverse people who might want to serve on different committees or appointed boards. And if you don't want to do that, I just want to make sure that people know they don't have to stand up at a work session to talk to us, that I can say that every one of our board members is open to hearing concerns, thoughts, and I think the more involved and the more diverse groups of people we have involved, the better will be. My committees that I'll be appointing coming up, and I would love to hear people who want to serve on them, Springs Park, both from the dog user aspect or others, would love to hear other interests, other groups out there who want to, or the people who want to serve on that committee. The Ag Advisory Committee, I will be the liaison to, and I'm open to anybody who wants to serve on that, who has an interest or a relationship to agriculture in the town. The Property Management Committee that is mentioned, and CHAB. So please reach out if anybody's interested in those committees particularly, but any appointed boards or any type of service, the more involvement we have, the better. I had preliminary conversations with the clerk's office. We were approached a couple of times this year about individuals from the public questioning our permit process and how, in particular, beach parking permits are issued. I would just like to look at the language there to, look, this is a complicated issue in that our parking lots fill up, and we want to make sure that we have places for our residents to park. I know that there are many people who try to get extra stickers who aren't residents, and those take up parking spaces. And so I want to clarify that language as much as possible to help the clerk with very clear rules that are reasonable, not that the current ones aren't. And I'm just saying this out loud so that anybody out there who has thoughts about how we should change that, I would like to hear from you and other board members. I'm going to open this up to everybody. And any other permits that the town issues, I think that refining our language to make sure that the language says exactly what we mean and is fair. And I think in the case of beach parking and so many other permits, if you let everybody have them, then you don't have parking for yourself. And I've certainly been to beaches. I rarely go to beaches, but I've driven up to beaches where there wasn't a parking space, and that's a bummer. So look forward to that conversation. I have a few comments on the senior center, but it may be most appropriate to just comment on the resolutions as they come up, unless we want to have that conversation now.
That's up to you, Ian.
I'll wait until the resolutions.
So I'm going to continue Ian's recruitment PSA for town committees and boards, and I'm a liaison to the East Hampton Sag Harbor CAC. So if anyone out there is interested in joining that committee, please reach out. And as you heard, we had a discussion today about alternate members for ARB and ZBA. If you would be interested in being an alternate member, please reach out to one of the board members and provide a resume, and we will consider you for that position. Last Wednesday, Eric Shantz, our housing director, and I met with members of the Greater East Hampton Chamber of Commerce to discuss affordable housing. We shared with them the projects that we're working on and other housing organizations are working on, and we got to hear, their feedback, frustrations and whatnot. And it was a very productive hour discussion. And what we've decided is it would be really productive if we met quarterly. So we're going to pick a topic. I'll be working with the executive director, Suzanne Kelly. We'll pick a topic each quarter and have members of the the Greater East Hampton Chamber of Commerce come to town hall for that discussion. The last thing I wanted to just talk about, I had sent an email out yesterday. Carol and the rest of us are working on 2025 for the organizational meeting on January 2nd at 11 a.m. One of the resolutions is we set the town board meeting dates for 2025. And, it's critical that we get this right because warrants depend on our Thursday night meetings. So I just want to, if I could just take a poll of board members. In February, we have during the school break, which runs the February 17th through the 21st, we have 2 board meetings, the work session on the 18th and a Thursday night meeting on the 20th. And in years past, we have canceled those meetings depending on the composition of the board and who was going to be away with their family that week. So, I just wanted to, I know, Tom, you think you're going to be out? I mean,
We
so
normally do a trip at some point that way. I had nothing's booked at this point, but yeah, normally, you know.
so I have to consider you out for the 18th and the 20th.
Yes, potentially.
Okay. David?
High probability because I believe in April, we're into sports seasons. And I think this one is in between.
And Ian,
Talk with the boss.
I know, Ian, you had said on the 20th you were out, so.
The 20th, I'm likely out. The 18th, I would be here.
Okay, all right, so we've got,
And that's the only meeting I anticipate.
so we only have three board members on the 18th, and we'd only have two on the 20th. So the 20th would definitely get rescheduled. We'll need to see, we may need to cancel the meeting on February 18th. Then we've got the April break, and that runs, it's before Easter. It goes from April 14th through the 18th, and we have two meetings that week. The 15th is the work session. The 17th is the town, the Thursday night meeting. Tom,
Yeah, I honestly, I just don't know. I have to
Okay.
check in with my other
Okay.
half on that one.
So,
I'll come back to you. Yeah,
David,
look, I don't make those, listen, when you're married to a teacher, those breaks.
yeah, no,
are-
that's why I asked. That's why I asked. We
yeah.
had the same thing when
Yeah.
Peter was on the board. So you're here that week?
I highly probability, yes, we are.
Okay.
If not, I'll be just taking a kid to go look at colleges or something like that. Close by.
I anticipate being here.
Okay.
I got another
So-
teenager. I had a birthday this week. We got 3 teenagers.
You would
So I
have
think-
to schedule something else in February, like the 25th or something for the Warren, if nothing else.
Yeah, we'll have to figure something out. And then the only other thing was the week in November, Election Day is November 4th and Veterans Day is November 11th, and town offices are closed. So what I'm going to propose is that we hold a town board work session on Wednesday, November 12th, so that we at least get 2 work sessions in November.
I'm definitely supportive of that. I think just make sure that there's no planning board conflict. I don't know the planning.
Well,
board
they don't
schedule.
they're not going to set their schedule until
Oh, okay.
after, and we'd be out of the room by 6:30.
Yeah, I definitely support another meeting.
Well, we can plan to be out of the room by 6:30. All right, so Carol, we'll regroup and finalize this so you can get that done. All right, so that's all I've got. So Tom, if you could start us off with resolutions.
Thank you. We'll start off with 2024-15. This is to retain LK McLean. This is to provide construction plans and specifications for mold remediation at the sanitation center in the sum not to exceed $11,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. 1516 is also to retain LK McLean. This is again for the sanitation department. This is for maintenance garage drainage project. This amount is not to exceed $59,600.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are able to offer resolution 2024-1517. This is SEP bid EH 24-055. This is for the Star Island dredging to Keith Grimes Incorporated. And this would be for the amount of $11,280.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have resolution 1518. This is the approval of special events for December 24 and January 25. The resolve that the special events committee has approved with the conditions agreed by the reviewing committee. The first is retroactive for Steve Tuma, Sound Aircraft Services, the East Hampton Airport Holiday Party. That was at the airport, and it was held on Sunday, the 8th, yesterday, from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. It was open to the public. Next, we have Amber Waves, Deck the Farms fundraiser. This will take place at Amber Waves Farm, 367 Main Street, Amagansett, Friday, 12/13 from 4 to 8 p.m. There is a rain date on 12/14 for the same hours. Inlet Seafood Holiday Boat Parade Viewing Party at Inlet Seafood, 541 East Lake Drive, Montauk, on Saturday, December 14th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. The Sag Harbor Community Food Pantry is holding their Wainscott Polar Bear Plunge. Beach Lane on Wednesday, January 1st, 2025 from 2 to 3 p.m. And the Montauk School District is holding their Montauk Plunge at Sunset Beach at 469-483 County Road, 77 Montauk on Sunday, January 5th, 2025. I would like to amend the date from 2024 to 2025 from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 1519 is to approve expenditures for the Litter Action Committee, and this is where Christine Ganich will be reimbursed in the amount of $511.91 from the Litter Action Committee's expenses upon proper submission of vouchers.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Resolution 2024-1520. This is to amend Resolution 2023-1287 to authorize acquisition of 82 Bull Oarsman Road, East Hampton, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-144.1-1-64. And the financial impact will be a total cost of the housing fund at resale will be $233,500 to acquire 100% of the interest in the land.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 1521, declare lead agency to amend Chapter 255 of the Town Code, Article 5, special permit uses to permit a maximum density of up to 12 units per acre for non-senior affordable housing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 1522 is to reappoint Kevin Warren to the East Hampton Housing Authority for a 5-year term expiring on December 16th, 2029.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
1523 is a budget modification for the police department. We're moving $3,300 from other equipment to motor vehicle repairs and supply, $1,040 from other equipment to equipment repair and maintenance, $4,500 from other equipment to office equipment, and $6,000 from office equipment to building maintenance and supplies.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
1524 is to retain Gallon Marine LLC to provide evaluation inspection of a 2002 Young Brothers vessel for establishing an approximate fair market value in an amount not to exceed $1,125.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
1525 is to accept bid number EH24-044, tree clearing for 403 Abraham's Path, Green Velvet Landscaping. The financial impact is $215,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion? Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted the senior, we first talked about the senior center in January, I think when I first came on the board. A lot of this process took place before my tenure on the board, and I find myself in a little bit of a difficult position in that I respect the work that's gone into it. I think that there's been, very strong opinions for the new design, against it. I respect both sides of that. So I don't want to vote against this. I'm going to abstain on this, and that's a strange position for me because I'm opinionated. It's not hard for me to come up with an opinion. I want to respect the work that's gone into it, but acknowledge that I wasn't here. The design has largely been fleshed out in terms of the big picture pieces since before my time, and I don't want to get in the way of that. I don't think every time a new board member comes on, we should start from scratch. But I just wasn't involved in those decisions. Again, so I don't want to vote against it because I don't want to be, obstructionist about this. I do want to say one other thing about the bats. I'm very confident that the SECRA process and that the planning department's attention to following the rules on that has been proper. So the reason I'm abstaining is only because this clearing is a result of the overall design, which again, I think has been in the works since before I got here. I'm happy that the supervisor and the town board have made some small tweaks that I think make this a better project with solar panels, changing the siding and other things, some cost saving measures. So I'm trying to be constructive throughout this process, but at the same time recognizing that decisions were made before I got here, but also being respectful of the work. So I just wanted to explain that position.
Okay, Carol, I think you need to do a roll call.
Thank you. I understand what you're saying, and I share it also as a new board member. I do have one kind of slight issue with this, which is to make this decision for clearing. for funding it prior to actually reviewing and discussing the Monroe aspect associated with this, because, I'd like to discuss on that as well when we get to it. So is there a way to actually discuss this after the Monroe piece or no?
That's a Rob question.
This is just accepting a bid.
This is right for pre-clearing.
Yeah. So I don't think you necessarily need to do Monroe first, but if you want to take it out of order, I don't see a problem with you doing that either.
Well, you want to do it out of order. So, Carol, do I have to?
Do I have to change?
Okay, we'll come back to it. Resolution 2024-1526 is the department head bonus compensation program. The town board amended chapter 37 of the town code relating to the department head bonus compensation program to enumerate the department head titles that are eligible for consideration under the program, and now we can do it by board resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
1527 is a resolution adopting a determination that proposed senior services center located at 403 Abraham's Path, Amagansett, New York, is upon application of the Monroe Balancing of Public Interest Test, exempt from the zoning and land use regulations of the town of East Hampton. I'm going to just read a few excerpts from the resolution. I'm sparing you because it's a 13-page resolution. The senior center will house the town's Department of Human Services and will provide a modern and spacious environment in which to provide new and expanded community services to East Hampton's senior citizen population. Included in the senior center documentation and as stated at the public hearing and public meetings by representatives of the town board, the function or land use involved is governmental and for a public purpose, as opposed to a private or proprietary one, in that it will provide community services and programs to East Hampton residents. The town's Department of Human Services is responsible for the town's senior programs for the aging, senior nutrition, senior transportation, in-home services, and residential repair program. The department also provides case management and makes referrals to other agencies that provide social and medical services. The town board has already received robust community input that has been incorporated into the concept of the proposed senior center. Nonetheless, the town board will elicit additional input on the senior center before it adopts the final site plan. The proposed senior center represents a substantial capital investment by East Hampton and in East Hampton's ability to provide highly essential community services. The review and approval of such an important town project is rightly placed in the elected officials who answer directly to East Hampton's residents. The public need for a new and expanded senior programs and services at a centrally located facility in East Hampton has been well documented. The proposed senior center will meet those needs and will improve the quality of life for senior residents of East Hampton at no or minimal charge. In addition, the proposed senior center has been the subject of an extensive SECRA review by the town board as lead agency and benefits from a determination of non-significance, i.e. negative declaration. While the town board acknowledges concerns raised by members of the public, they must be viewed in light of the circumstances. As stated above, the existing senior center is ill-equipped to handle the current and future needs of the town's aging population and to house the town's Department of Human Services. The town board plans to elicit further public comment and participation in the process before finalizing plans to construct the proposed senior center. Especially, the town board will seek written comment from the planning board and ARB in a timely manner before the senior center site plan is finalized. Pursuant to the Monroe Balancing of Public Interest Test, when taken together upon consideration of the balancing approach, the town board hereby finds and declares that the proposed senior center and the projects contemplated therein are exempt and immune from the town's local land use and zoning regulations, including without limitation all standards, requirements, and procedures set forth in the town code, and shall be required to receive the necessary variance and shall not be required to receive the necessary variances from the ZBA, a special permit or formal site plan approval from the planning board, or approval from the ARB, and shall instead proceed to the Town of East Hampton Building Department and Fire Marshal's Office, subject to the conditions found in the body of the resolution.
Second.
Move for discussion.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think we've gone through and we've discussed Monroe from many aspects, and it's the public interest piece here, which I think is, does it outweigh the need? I mean, as Ian mentioned earlier, with regards to kind of the design process, et cetera, there's aspects that personally I am uncomfortable with, but that's not what this is about. I would also say that, from in terms of the need for the town, with demographics and the gray wave coming, I do think that we will have definitively an increased need for providing services to seniors. With regards to the existing senior center, we have put some money into it this year, replacing the siding and improving the walking track there. I think there's a continued need to put more money in there because, as people have noted, it is kind of not in the greatest state continued. There's leaks in the roof and other factors that I think we continue to address. But this is more about Monroe itself and whether this is the right decision for the town to take in circumnavigating the typical process for which a project like this would go to. My concern here is really around the precedent this might set, not just for us, but for also future boards and what that may indicate. And, for me, I think that there's a risk there that I personally am not supportive. So I'm not going to be supporting this resolution. I think there's still some areas that I would like to see us address. I think number one, and I brought this up before, is the financial aspect associated with this. We've talked about numbers. There was the initial discussion of the 10 million. I think that was completely unrealistic. We're now close to 30 million, and that number is likely to go up with inflation and other factors as we see this. And I think, giving the public a very clear understanding of how we're going to pay for this and what it's actually going to cost the taxpayer is a critical step in this. But going back to Monroe very specifically, as I said, I think the precedent is set to take, decisions like this outside of the typical process is not one I can support.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just add that I was not on the board when the original Monroe hearing took place. I think it's reasonable for the town board to do this. I think there are certain projects that are for public benefit where the town board should be able to act. So I'm not criticizing that in any way. But the specific resolution is written towards this project design. So for the same reason, as I said previously, I'll recuse myself. I do want to make one comment about Tom's, the cost issue. I think even if this went before regulatory boards, it would be improper for them to think about the cost to the town. I think their role would be, site plan, variances, setbacks, things like that. But it wouldn't be, I don't think that this, by involving them, would make that cost conversation go any differently. So that's where I stand.
Okay. So may I comment? Sure. So for me, coming to this decision, I just remind everyone that we had standards that we were to go by to make this decision. It wasn't based on feelings or there were strict standards. We walked through them. I issued my support at that time based on the standards. I wasn't actually here since this has been going on for a while to give a healthy and a dignified environment for our senior population and also our town department, Human Services. And if anyone has any doubt about, and I am tempted to sit here and go through the links of what services are provided by Human Services, not just in the senior center, but across town. So therefore, researching this, I went by the standards for the Monroe test. It's not the Monroe Doctrine. That's something different for the Monroe test. And I've already enumerated why I think that this resolution, the senior center meets the standards set forth in the Monroe test that we are bound to consider. And also in doing that, further due diligence was to look at other communities. What do they do when they build a community resource? Because this is not a residence, it's not a commercial structure, it's a community resource. And we seem to be lacking a definition in the code that all other adjoining municipalities and even further up the chain, further up the state use, and I hope we address that in the future, and then that would end the fear of setting any type of precedents. But so that was those are my reasons for voting for this resolution.
And if I could just, I'm sorry to say a couple more things. I do think that this meets the standards. So again, I think that it's a very reasonable decision if the board moves forward with this. I also just want to explicitly say that the senior center needs to be redone. There's a clear need there. And I think that the current plan, so much we're talking about who uses the current senior center. I've said in my liaison report and previously that I think this new structure or whatever the new design would offer, new things that don't currently exist, like housing the human services department. I think a different demographic of people who won't use the dilapidated senior center would use something like this. And so I recognize the benefits and I want to be explicit about that. It's just that because this is around this particular design is why I'm choosing to recuse myself.
So for me, it's not the design, it's what's going to happen under that roof that takes precedence.
So can I ask you, when you say the design, I mean, it's not final, the design, right? So we should have a work session on the design if you're not comfortable with it, because we all need to be comfortable with it moving forward.
Right.
I mean, I know you would like to see a basement. We went through all the reasons why we can't put mechanicals in the basement. That's not FEMA, or I think it was FEMA.
It's also, I mean, basements flood. That's the last place you want to put mechanicals.
So, we're open to discussing. It's not, it's still a work in progress. We've made many changes since you became liaison to the Amagansett CAC. We weren't getting feedback from them because, from what I understood, the liaison, they didn't have a representation for a number of meetings. You brought back information, lower ceiling, the stainless steel. We've incorporated those changes. So we want to hear from the community. But I also have to say, some of the comments that came up today, to say that only 15 people go there a day is complete misinformation. I mean, we know, we've been there.
I'm going to call it a lie.
Okay. But, as far as the design is concerned, we can, there's time to make changes for sure. But, the property needs to, where we're proposing to clear is where you would site any building, because there's topography there and it's level there, and that is the best site on that property for the center. But so anybody else want to weigh in? And otherwise we'll take a vote.
You call it a lie, I just call it gaslighting.
Yeah.
I think it's
synonymous. Supervisor, I leave that up to you whether you want to re-engage. I think when Tom and I had spoken about the basement sort of off the cuff previously, to redo those plans is a really big deal. I think that the previous boards have been through iterations and made a choice. And so at that point I said, look, I don't want to demand to see this just for my own sake. So I would understand if you move forward. If you want to re-engage, that's okay. I just know that every time you redo plans like this and look at different options, it's a delay. It's a process, and
I guess
you've all gone through that.
Right.
So
to say redo, I guess I don't know what your input is that we could, because I'm not suggesting we, tear up the current plans and start over. That's not what I'm suggesting. But if there are things that can be made, changes that, that the plans that when you both came into office in January were plans that had been approved by, David, Kate, myself, Peter and Sylvia, right? Because they had been working on this with us for the last couple of years. I understand now it's a new board. We've got 2 new members that want to have input on it. And, and we've made changes since you came on board in reaction to members of Tom's CAC having had brought thoughts forward that were definitely worth incorporating. So, but that's fine. I think at this point, we'll take a vote on the Monroe balancing test. If you could call a roll call, please, Carol.
So I seconded already.
Right.
Councilmember Flake.
Nay.
Councilmember Lees.
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Councilmember Calder Piedmont.
recused.
Supervisor Burke Gonzalez.
Aye. Okay, so let's keep going, and then
I think I have the next one, but I lost my
and then we'll
page.
go back to the
25.
to the bid.
That's David. I think you're next, right? 21?
I am
Yeah,
so
page
sorry.
21.
Page 21.
Did I miss one? Hey, check that one out. Okay. This is resolution 2024. We are 2024-1528. This is authorized.
We got to go back to the 1525.
Oh, you want to go back to that one next? Okay,
Oh,
so
right.
let's do.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay, so now we're back to, just get there. Okay. Resolution 1525, accept bid number EH24-044, tree clearing for 403 Abraham's Path, goes to Green Velvet Landscaping with the financial impact of $215,000.
Second.
Do we want to roll call? Oh, you want to call for
Roll
You
call.
want
Same
discussion?
discussion.
Okay.
It says roll call, Marie.
Councilmember Flight,
Nay.
Councilmember Lees,
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers,
Aye.
Councilmember Calder Piedmont,
Recuse?
Supervisor Burke Gonzalez.
Aye. Okay, so now we go back to page 21.
We are at the moment that can offer resolution 2024-1528. This is authorized the release of part of the highway for Hamilton, Santa Cola, McCarver, Curls, and Mitchell. The town of East Hampton is the owner of the highway right away at Amagansett and Bluff Road, whereas the owners of properties at 22 Bluff Road, 28 Bluff Road, aka 632 Montauk Highway, 630 Montauk Highway, have made a request of the town to release the quitclaim to them. The northernmost of the 33 feet of the Bluff Road right-of-way adjoining the southern side. And also with this resolution, subject to permissive referendum authorizing the town board and superintendent of highways to release by way of a quitclaim deed to the portions of the unopened area, the Bluff Road right-of-way in Amagansett, which is not utilized or necessary for the use of the town highway known as the Bluff Road, adjacent to 22 Bluff Road, 28 Bluff Road, and 630 Bluff Montauk Highway, and the record owners thereon named Elizabeth Hamilton at Charles and April Santacola, and Lori McGarver, and Dennis Curls, and Frederick and Gail Mitchell. All costs associated to the recording. The quitclaim deed relates to the covenants holding the town harmless.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay, resolution 1529, this is to authorize partial stipulation of settlement dash 117 BVA LLC versus the building department et al. Index number 613065/2024. And this is a partial stipulation of settlement on a property located and known as 117 Bayview Avenue, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 384, Block 1, Block 3.1, consisting of 0.57 acres zoned as A residence premises. This premises is situate at the northerly terminus of Bayview Avenue on the west side of Bayview Avenue. The northerly portion of the premises fronts along Nappy Gardner's Bay and is situated within Coastal Erosion Overlay Zone 2, Bay Littoral Zone CEOZ-2. The premises are improved with a single-family dwelling and associated improvements. This has been this is regarding geotextile tubes that were placed along the property and also across the road the road, Bayview Avenue, blocking public access. This has a long history of litigation, etc. And this is a partial stipulation of settlement, and it relates to having one of the benefits would be to have the geotextile cubes removed from the public access area of the road right-of-way. It's a very long resolution. The resolved is that the town board hereby authorizes the partial settlement of the foregoing matter to the terms above and the execution of a partial stipulation of settlement by the supervisor, subject to review and approval of the town attorney.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution 1530 is to adopt local law amending Article 7 of East Hampton Town Code, Section 255-720, Architectural Review Board, to appoint alternate members to the Architectural Review Board. And again, this is the major section that is here is C, alternate members. The town board may appoint up to 2 additional alternate members to serve where a member is absent or has a conflict of interest. alternate members of the Architectural Review Board shall be appointed by resolution of the town for a term of 1 year.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
A resolution 1531 is to adopt local law amending Article 7 of the East Hampton Town Code 255-8-20, terms and duties of members, to appoint alternate members to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And again, we had a public hearing, as we did for the previous one, on Thursday, June 16th, to consider this law and all comments to this law. And this also allows us to appoint, the town board to appoint up to 2 additional alternate members to serve where a member is absent or has a conflict of interest on the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And lastly, I have Resolution 2024-1532, and this is a stipulation of settlement in a personnel matter.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's all the business I think we have before the board today. And this is our last meeting of 2024 here in the Montauk Library, but we'll be back. We really appreciate how welcoming and you've made it for us. And do I have a motion to go into exec session?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session for CPF, personnel, advice of counsel, real estate, and litigation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.